Greetings from California. Today we are going to discuss an awesome autobiography that I've just read here. We're going to be talking about And Then It Was Now by Christopher Guard. And right here with me is none other than Christopher Guard. Hi, Christopher.
Hi, Grego. Nice to
How's
see
it?
you again.
Oh, you can just call me Greg.
Oh,
And
you don't like Grego. Okay, Greg it is.
okay. So how are you doing today? You're in England, right?
I am in England. I'm in my house, yeah, and I'm okay, but I've just had novavirus, and for the uninitiated, it's like a vomiting bug. It's really disgusting. I won't
Mhm.
go into too many details, but I know I don't have to for you because we cancelled a Zoom meeting on Tuesday. Well,
Mhm.
I suggested I could do it. I said I'll rock and roll it. I'll get through it. I said it might be an interesting meeting because if I collapse and die, at least you'll have a good slope. And
Yeah.
you
The
said
autobiography of Christopher Guard and the death of Christopher Guard on YouTube.
exactly. Yes, well, that's what you said. You said the life and death of Christopher Guard. No, no, no. Because some people I mentioned novavirus to, they haven't heard of it, so they think, oh, he's just whinging on. It's man vomit. Well, it
Oh,
is man vomit. It's great vomit, but it was honestly, seriously, 36 hours of unmitigated hell. My
yeah.
grandkids had it, and they're tiny, and they didn't know what had hit them. Little bee, she's 2 years old, and suddenly her supper had turned into this. Well, you can imagine. She's
Oh,
going, what's happening to me? I was struggling enough myself. It was really, really nasty. But now you told me it was wonderful in a way because you said, look, we're not going to do this meeting because
mhm.
I understand. We're going to do it on Thursday, maybe, because you had personal insight into novavirus yourself.
Did I ever? And it's extremely strange that it actually ties in with what is now my second copy of your autobiography. I had norovirus where I didn't know what it was. I got really sick, exactly like what you're describing. I thought it was just the flu, but it was all the vomiting and then extreme fatigue. And what ended up happening is our family was going to Japan, and on the way to the San Francisco airport, one of my daughters said, "Daddy, my tummy hurts," and she doesn't usually start crying unless there's something really going on. And she actually got sick with the norovirus. She had gotten it from me, and she started to get symptoms on the way to the airport. And we were headed to Tokyo to visit family. So when we got on the plane, we gave her some Dramamine for motion sickness, thinking that maybe it was from being in the car going over a mountain. When
So
we got on the plane, as soon as the plane took off, this was a nice big 787 Dreamliner. Um, as soon as this big old beast took off, as soon as the wheels left the ground, my daughter threw up. And this was when there was still a mask mandate on Japanese airlines because
wow.
there was still a mask mandate in Japan at that time. So when I saw my daughter throw up, she was sitting one seat behind me. I immediately took off my seatbelt and jumped up to go help her because she had thrown up in her mask. Now, what happened is the Japanese crew of this plane yelled at me, just, hey, you have to get back in your seat. Okay, now, if you think about this, whenever somebody is leaving for an international flight, you're going to be in the air for 14 hours, okay? The last thing you want is for right when the plane leaves the ground to all of a sudden hear the crew yelling at somebody. And they didn't realize that my daughter had vomited in her mask. So I did go back and take her mask off and try to help clean her up. And unfortunately, I suspect that a very large number of people on that plane probably got it also uh, from that event. Now,
Wow.
when we arrived in Tokyo, 12 to 14 hours later, yeah, it's 14 hours there, 12 back. Um, when the plane landed, the crew came back and told us that we're not going to let you off of the plane. And I'm like, what? Well, why would that be? And they ended up letting everybody else off, and then they came back and said that we need you to come with us. And what they did is they quarantined us because they didn't know what would have caused something like that. And they did a full in-depth coronavirus test to make sure it wasn't that. And they were very polite about it. We actually got to see a isolation area of the Tokyo airport where when people come in and they're ill, that they're actually isolated there. It had previously been used for COVID. In fact, I took a picture of it. I thought, oh, this is cool. Here's something you don't see on the internet. It's a Japanese isolation area at the airport. So I took a picture of it, and my daughter goes, Daddy, you're not supposed to do that. It says no pictures. And I didn't see the sign, but we ended up getting quarantined from it. And then this book, the first copy of it, was actually left there at our Airbnb because one of my daughters was recovering from it. It was a chain reaction. The first one got it, and then a couple of days later, the second one got it, and then my wife ended up catching it, and then I think my mother-in-law might have also. So it is a terrible thing. And when people mention norovirus, it's something that can floor you, as you experienced.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, it's if you haven't heard of it and if you've never had any experience of it, then obviously it means nothing at all. But if
right.
you have an experience of it, I mean, a few people I've spoken to in the last couple of days have either gone, "Oh no, never heard of it," or
Mm,
"Oh God." I mean, because it is I mean, it's 36 hours of like a. I mean,
yes.
your stomach feels like there's a kind of rock inside it, pushing against your stomach wall, and you
Hmm.
cannot get everything out quick enough. I mean,
Yep.
and you don't even know what's happening. So you've gone to bed and you're going like, oh yeah, and then you suddenly think, I've got to get up.
Yeah.
Something's
Yeah.
happening. So you sit on
Yeah.
the toilet. You sit on the toilet, and something happens. It's not very nice. So you think, oh, well, let's got rid of that. You go back to bed, and you lie down, and you go 20 minutes later, got to get up. So you're backwards
Yeah.
and forwards, up and
Yeah.
down the line all bloody night, and real proper, forgive me, projectile vomiting. Just hideous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well,
after a couple of days of that, you
yeah.
just when it eventually stops, obviously there's no electrolytes, there's no nutrients left in your body,
Yes.
everything's to cop. So you just got to recover. I mean, I don't know. It just totally took me by surprise. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that people that have had norovirus know exactly what it is,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
people
We
that
should
don't,
form a society like the United Nations.
that
Something as
the
significant as that.
right, the norovirus awareness network or something like that.
You have a special handshake.
Right. So
I
this,
know how you feel, bro.
right. Now, with this being the second copy of your autobiography,
Yeah.
the first one was left at our Airbnb in Fuji, Japan. And when I had started reading it, I had started annotating it like this current one. And that was when the second daughter was down with the norovirus. So everybody was out having fun, visiting Mount Fuji, going to the zoo and recreational areas and the lakes and all of that. And I was starting your autobiography. And what ended up happening was that when we left that Airbnb, I left that on the nightstand. And I realized when I got on the plane that your book was missing. I had brought several books with me. I had planned on reading it more on the flight back, and I could not figure out why I didn't have the book until I kind of remembered leaving it on the nightstand. So what I did is I sent them an email and asked them. I sent them a picture of the cover, and I said, "Is there any chance that I left that there?" And they were extremely polite, as you might expect, and they said, "Yes, we have it, and thank you for the donation." They said, "We will put it in our bookshelf." I'm like, okay, well, that's not really what I meant, but they do have a community bookshelf there at the Airbnb where you can donate books. So there is a copy of And Then It Was Now partially annotated by me in Fuji Yoshida, Japan, in the
Yeah.
shadow of Mount Fuji.
Well,
So,
it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, what an accolade. That's fantastic. I'm really happy.
okay, well, listen, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today about this, because I want people to be aware of this book. Um, it, and we're going to get into that. They're going to find out why this is something that they need to read. And this isn't limited to just Doctor Who fans, because you were in Doctor Who, yes, and we may touch on that. We've already talked about that. But in arts and performing arts, this is a very important piece, because this is something that actually inspired me um, towards actually writing my own autobiography. And I have mentioned that to you, and I appreciate that, because the way that this is written has taken some of the it's kind of removed a hurdle. It's kind of removed a little bit of a fear of not knowing if I could actually do that, because of the way that you've constructed this. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and jump right into this here. Folks, this book right here is going to be available from all of your favorite booksellers. Okay. The title, And Then It Was Now, by Christopher Guard. And this is published by Oak Tree Books. It runs 199 pages. These were actually made in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's my copy here is absolutely excellent quality. That it's full of illustrations. The text is the perfect size, and it is durable. After reading this and reading many of the chapters over and over again, the spine is still really strong, and it's excellent quality. But the quality aside is not as important as to what's inside. So um, let's go ahead and start with the dedication. Okay, I'm going to open this up here. The dedication says, "For my children and grandchildren, Daisy, Rosie, Tallulah, May, Jude, Molly, and Beatrice." Wow, Chris, that sounds really beautiful.
Yeah. And in the original copy I had of this, there were a couple of hundred printed. They were pre-order copies that were briefly available with a different cover. And I noticed when I was looking at this the other day that the dedication doesn't include Beatrice.
Oh, Beatrice.
In my original copy, it doesn't, because by the time this one you have, that was when it became it was the kind of official version. Baby's been born, so she's in
Oh, okay,
there.
cool. All
Yeah.
right. Now jumping to the forward, this is written by none other than somebody that a couple of people might have heard of, a gentleman named Brian Blessed. Is this somebody that you just like ran into on the train or something and said, "Hey, will you write a forward to my book?"
Well, it could have happened that way. It didn't. I mean, in fact, Brian and I worked together 3 times, kind of, although not really shoulder to shoulder until Return to Treasure Island, when we worked together for 5 months and became sort of soulmates and blood brothers, and yeah, kind of shared the highs and the lows of filming in Jamaica and Almeria and everywhere else. It was a tough old gig, but Brian and I, we're very different in some ways, different backgrounds, and but we have similar spirits. Love of nature. Brian's not what he seems to be. People think of him as some kind of great, carousing, fat, bruising guy. He's not that at all. He's very zen. He's very chilled. He loves climbing mountains. I mean, he's God knows what age he is now. Is he 90 yet? Nearly. I spoke to him a couple of months ago, and he's still the same. "Christopher, I love you. You're wonderful. You're a wonderful man." He says, "You're a wonderful man." I mean, I've really got to go. But no, he's still absolutely in love with life and with the universe. He goes up mountains in South America, and he's looking at things through mega-sized telescopes, and his optimism, positivity is quite extraordinary. And I think in my better moments, I'm kind of similar in that way. So we were well cast as Long John Silver and Jim Hawkins, who have this kind of love-hate relationship, but at the same time, deep down, they're like, yeah, they're soulmates, they're brothers. So it was great that Brian agreed to write the forward, because he's obviously a busy man and a much loved man, and he straight away said, of course, I want to do it,
Okay.
and he loved it. I mean, he loved the book.
Yeah,
You know, he,
obviously. Yeah.
and well, I mean, one or two people don't get it, and that's fair enough, because things can be a bit Marmite, but yeah, no. So I was just delighted that he got it, loved it, and wrote me a lovely forward. So
Yeah.
thanks again, Brian. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's the forward really starts out with a bang. Is it okay with you if I read the first sentence of it here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think he took.
Okay.
I think Brian took his. I think he took his sort of prompt. Having read the book, I can tell he wrote the forward quite quickly after having read the book, because you can feel the connection between
Yes.
him and
Yeah.
the world. And I can tell I triggered things in his memory banks about the BBC North Acton rehearsal rooms and all that, and he's obviously just gone ding 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 ding. Oh wow, yeah. It's
Right.
like time stands still and you're back in another world.
Right. Okay. So yeah, he captured it, and this is one of the most beautiful forwards I've ever read. And I don't know how many forwards Brian Blessed does, but this one right here is just a masterpiece. Okay. It starts out with wham, bam, alakazam. This book leaves me godsmacked. It's a celebration of life, nature, lights, camera, and action. Off we go. And it goes on with what a privilege to write the foreword for such a remarkable man as Christopher Garden. So the foreword's going to describe the experience that you are going to have reading this book absolutely perfectly. And once again, that is by none other than Brian Blessed. Now, let's touch on each chapter. I annotated some things in this, and with this being 200 pages and 20 chapters. I don't want to keep you really long, because I could talk to you about this book forever. This is the perfect inspiration for somebody who may have considered writing their own autobiography, but it's also an absolutely fascinating tale into the performing arts. So, starting with chapter 1, titled "What Am I Doing?" This actually introduces the reader to, yes, exactly what you're doing. And I think a good example would be to mention this part here. I should be writing an unusual autobiography about when I was interviewed on the Braden beat about the Cuban Missile Crisis, when I played a young David Copperfield that grew into a young Ian McKellen. I should. I shall not disappoint. Sondheim and Liz Taylor, Gielgud and Elton John, they are all here and there, I promise. And yes, that is exactly accurate. What would you have to say about that, Chris?
Well, I think the thing is, people had been asking me or nudging me to write some kind of autobiographical thing. I'd written a novel, which was with a very good literary agent called Maggie Nowak, and she unfortunately died rather prematurely, and it all fell
Oh
by the
no.
wayside. Yeah,
Oh
and
no.
it's a good novel. It was a few years back, but I kind of, when she'd gone, our contact connection with the publisher kind of changed, and so it never really. It'll happen. It'll happen. It's not done yet, but I knew I could write. I knew I could write, but I didn't particularly want to write an autobiography. I didn't want to write about acting. I didn't want to write about, but I did want to write. So the way I eased my way into it was literally by what I was feeling, thinking, like a chapter that's called "But." I'm going like, do I want to do this? I'm not quite sure I do, you know. So
Right.
the whole thing is a weave of, yes, of extraordinary, well-known, fascinating people, but I give equal credence to my psychotic Jack Russell dog Jeeves, to
Right.
my voluptuous Dundonian au pair Moira, to, you name it, they're all in there, and they're all stars. They're all stars of my particular show,
Right.
because I've never seen myself as the star of anything, but more as someone to whom things happen. And that is a kind of dichotomy, because as an actor, you're meant to act, but as a writer, it's more about receiving the information and then turning it into something else. So I hope that's what I've achieved so that the thing is like a tapestry. And
Right.
one or two people have read it and said, "Oh, go, it's all over the place. I don't understand." They go, no, calm down. If you read it on its own terms, it all makes, I don't even like the word sense, but it has, I know it works, and I mean, when I wrote it, I was less sure, but because of some of the lovely feedback I've had from some people, I think, well, yeah, whatever I was trying to do has kind of worked.
Right. Okay. And it's absolutely loaded with humor.
Oh, you got to
I
have a laugh.
Yeah, I think that at some point I might have actually strained some cheek muscles because I was grinning.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I was absolutely grinning throughout this. And I'll tell you what, you really got my attention with one thing. Uh you used a word here, spliff. Okay, that is
Yeah, yeah.
SPLIF. And
I think, is it two F's, I think.
Yes, yeah, two F's. Okay. And when I
Yeah,
read that, I thought, no, there is no way that that possibly means what I think it does, because we use the word spliff here in California as well. Matter of fact, I've seen quite a lot of spliffs in my time, but I didn't
yeah.
inhale. Okay. So I had to go and check and make sure that this was the same meaning in the US and the UK. And
Yeah. Well, unlike
uh
the word fag, which was a little bit unfortunate because, of course, we call cigarettes fags, and you call that was a different kind of word in the US. So
yeah, that one
yeah,
doesn't go over well here. You
yeah,
don't want to be you don't
it's
want
not,
to
it's
yeah, you
not,
don't
it's
want to
very
use that
very
word in a
non-PC. You don't want to use it anyway, but
right.
but no, that did happen to a few people. They go to America and say, "Do you know where I can get? I mean, can you give me a fag?" I mean, it's like, what? Um, can you give me a split? Yeah, no, I mean, look, marijuana was everywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, God Almighty, it's semi-legal now, isn't it? In places like Germany and places like Portugal and Holland have experimented. It's something that exists. You can't get rid of it.
right, right,
It's and used. It depends what you take. I mean, I had some run-ins with it and liked it. But I don't like. I never liked really strong stuff. It's just
right.
to me, it's like saying, what's the difference between a glass of beer and pure Polish vodka? I mean, they're both alcohol,
Right,
but
right.
one's strong, one isn't. So it's like, oh my God, you take drugs. I'm going, well, yeah, I may, but I'm not sitting over at the pub drinking, gallons of whiskey, poisoning my liver.
Right, right,
I mean,
right.
for heaven's sake, it's just common sense, really, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
yeah, split means exactly what you think it means.
you're
Split.
right. Okay.
Times with if. Yeah.
Okay, well, for people watching and listening, I'm not going to spoil this book. This is going to be spoiler free for the most part. But Liz Taylor is in this book, and and that's all I'm going to say about that. And congratulations, Chris. You were the first person that I ever talked to that can take claim for something like that. So people, you can read between the
So
lines. Okay.
you're kind of making a connection between splits and 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 pianos and Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, I don't know. People are just going to have to
Okay,
read to
no,
find out. Okay. Now,
that would be a spoiler.
as far as
Continue.
marijuana, it is legal here now. And in fact, well, in California, and the United States is actually going to declassify it. I've never considered it to be a drug. I consider it to be a natural herb. And of course, I do not recommend smoking it because it can damage your lungs.
Well, that's what happened
But
to me. That's
yeah,
the only reason I regret. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, when I was first smoking, both, hey, are you smoking straights or are you smoking split? So,
Right.
but I mean, back then it was just, that was the problem. It was like when you're smoking a joint, you're
Hmm.
also inhaling loads of tobacco at the same time, holding it down. And what's that doing to your
Yeah,
lungs? You know,
and
it's
right,
kind of,
and there's no filter. So I
yeah.
think it's very fortunate that these days that there are much safer alternatives. Here we can
Yeah,
get
definitely.
gummies.
So I mean,
Um,
yeah, I call it chocolate brownies.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's gotten really powerful since the 70s or so, especially once it became regulated and hybridized. It's gotten really powerful here, and I don't really care for the very extremely powerful effects. I have scoliosis.
No,
And
no.
for me, it's been good for back pain,
Oh, right. I see. I see.
occasionally,
Yeah.
occasionally, because I don't like to take drugs, especially opioids. And I'm glad that there's actually a natural remedy for people that want to self-medicate. And my goodness, how it has changed over the years. I think you and I are almost the same age, so I know exactly what you're talking about smoking it back in the 70s and the 80s. So um, let's go ahead and wrap up there with chapter number 1 and move on to chapter 2, which is titled But. Now, you had told me before that you come from a family of entertainers and artists because you and I talked, I think it was last year, which it was mostly about a Doctor Who adventure, Children of the Circus. And you had mentioned your father, Philip Gard. Now, this chapter 2 here, titled But, it actually opens up with an image and a page of a beautifully written article in the theater. Is it Theater Royale or Theater Royal?
It's a Royal in Windsor. Yeah,
Theater
Windsor just.
Royal. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's so this is a theater program, and I'm wondering if I'm going to show this while you're answering this. I'm wondering if your writing skills. Um, here's the article I'm talking about right here.
Yeah,
I'm
that
one
was when Dad was a he was a writer as well as an actor, and
right.
he was playing the lead in one or two of his own plays at the Theatre Royal Windsor. It's a great place to try out new plays, and no, he got off to an amazing start in his career, and yeah, I think I do. I think my writing skills. I mean, I'm a songwriter as well as anything else, and I think that inevitably involves lyrics, which are sort of akin to poetry, although poetry doesn't always make great lyrics, and vice versa. But I think because my mum is a published poet, although mum also wrote for telly and stuff, but I think a lot of my, I mean, I've got both. I'm very lucky. I got Dad was he was very good at sculpting scripts. You know, he could write a play a bit like Noel Coward could in a day. You know, he would plot it, get all the acts, the scenes. He could see the set, the whole thing. He was very good at structuring things in a very practical kind of way with a logic and all the different characters. Mum was more of a poet, you know, and expressing kind of subtler, transient things, everyday things that are not so easy to perhaps to understand. So I think there was a slight, not a tension between them, but I think Dad was a real worker. You know, he was a workaholic. He loved working hard. I finished it, done. You know, done. You know, and then he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I think I fall somewhere between the two, and I'm lucky to have inherited, you know, Dad's kind of work ethic and his vision, with
Mhm.
Mum's more pastoral, reflected way of looking at the world.
Okay. So you're multi-talented in arts and performing arts because writing is definitely an art. Now, do you believe that your ability to write your own autobiography in such an excellent manner is due to being surrounded by writers when you were young?
I think I definitely got. I understood that you could start with a piece of blank paper and make something out of it.
Mhm.
In other words, you know, there's lots of references in this little diary here that I kept when I was 9 years old,
Oh, and
and
you
it's
still
just
have it?
yeah, and it's a little page a day diary. It's hilarious.
Oh,
It's
wow.
almost like it's almost like the precursor to my book.
Really?
but it's just, well, it's just full of, what's interesting about it is it's full of a mixture of things that sort of seem kind of important and things that are not important at all. Like every day I say, what we had for lunch. And well, here's an example. Like in the morning for breakfast, we have bacon, toast, egg, and hot cross buns. Diana came round and we made a play called Caught in an Accident. Then we have lunch. After lunch, Jane and Simon come. Then Diana, me, and Nid, that was my brother, do our play for them. Then we play together. Then Simon and Jane go, and I go to town and see Mum in Wacko, which was a radio show that Mum recorded before a live audience. That's just one day, but that's the kind of tone of it. So I think being surrounded by writers and actors, it definitely, I mean, look, all kids play dressing up games, all kids have fun with fantasy, imagination. So I don't think it was exclusive to us, but the fact that it was my mum and dad's job made it seem all the more, I don't know what the word is, but it just made it more available and something that you felt connected with, and it was fun to do.
Okay. All right. Now,
Does that make sense?
yeah, it does totally. And you said you started writing that at age 9?
That was when I was young. Unfortunately, I didn't finish it. I got to here, June the 5th. And then I ran out of energy. But that's an interesting page. It says, see, this was when I was already getting exposed to television because I was quite a bright little kid, and people, mates of mum and dad, used to think, oh, maybe he could do this or maybe he could do that. So I was asked to review a book on television written by a journalist called Claire Rayner at BBC Lime Grove. So today I have to do a telly at Lime Grove about a book I've just read. We do rehearsals, then all the actors have a smashing lunch in a lovely dining room. After lunch, I do the television. After I came back, Dad and I go swimming at Lime Grove. So, it's funny, this is kind of similar to my book because it is a mix of the extraordinary, the almost impossible, and the very ordinary and mundane that really makes the tapestry of life. And what really is more important, the little things or the big things. And that's how I think I've always been, that's how life has always affected me.
Okay, excellent. Hearing that, as you know, I have twin 7-year-old daughters, and they have actually been inspired by this interview series that I did for 1 or maybe even 2 years, a study on arts and performing arts. That's actually when I interviewed you on the Doctor Who story and the Doctor Who episode that you were in with Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred, and they actually were inspired by people telling their stories of becoming involved in arts and performing arts. So it did work. And I appreciate your involvement in that series when I was doing that. It did work, and they have started writing. And what you've just read really reminds me of something that my daughter has been doing recently, and you were part of inspiring her.
Just show you one other thing, right?
Okay.
So this is the diary I kept when I was 9. I've got to get up.
Okay.
In this drawer, are hundreds of these, and they're all diaries, and they're very similar to the one I was just reading from, in so much as they're not emotional records of my life. They started as appointments diaries. So, if you're thinking about how do I write, I'd write down something like, I've got an appointment at so-and-so, dentist, blah, blah, blah. And then retrospectively, I'd go, well, I haven't filled it all up, so I'll just fill in some more details. But what evolved was a kind of mix of, just like these things I kept when I was a boy, And these are ones I've been keeping recently, right up. I still keep them. People go, how can you be bothered to do that in a digital age with your fountain pen every single day? And I say, no, it's a drag sometimes, yeah. But I will put in, I'll mention, that Donald Trump's being indicted. I'll mention that I had beans on toast for lunch. I'll mention that the weather was terrible. I'll mention that Fulham won 2-0. I'll mention that one of the kids had a cold. I'll mention, and
Right.
it's a mixture of what really happens to us in our life. So when I go back into them, I go like, oh my God, all that happened that same week. I would never have thought that was the same day that happened. And yet by keeping these little things, I couldn't live without them, actually. And they're not designed to be commercial. They're not designed for any purpose except my son-in-law, Ben, has said, Chris, when you die, can I have your little diaries? Because he finds them absolutely fascinating. So anyway,
Wow.
so this is it's writing, but it's not writing, if you see what I mean.
Right.
If I'm
Right.
not trying to be artistic, I do that in my music, or I do that in a book, but these are just there to remind me for my sanity almost. What
And you
really happens? What
and
really happens?
so do you think that in a digital world, instead of you just typing this into a file, you said you're using a fountain pen. Okay. Wow. How
I,
British is that? How British is that?
I love my
Do-
fountain pen. My mum gave it to me, and it's just,
Mhm.
I paint obviously as well, and I draw and all that. It's a dexterous process. I mean, and even just I've tried writing in my diaries with just an ordinary biro or something, and I do sometimes, but I feel almost like I feel like it's against the law. I'm not writing. I feel like I'm going to be stricken down by Elijah. Like, you're not using the fountain. And every time anybody says to me, why? I go like, fuck off. I don't, what do you mean why? I don't
Because
know why. I'm
because
just doing
that's how you want to do it.
it. Exactly. Why are you doing it like that? It's easier to do it like this.
Right.
You know?
Okay, so let's jump up to chapter 3 here. Okay, the chapter is titled Excuses. Begins with there are no excuses. It's been months since I started writing this book. There's been a pandemic and all sorts of tribulations. Okay, I'll just leave it at that because I'm leaving this spoiler free
Yeah,
for people that have not read this yet.
sure,
Now,
sure.
something I annotated in this, being a fan of music, as you and I both are, that's a very strong, powerful, lifelong trait that we share. The we're music people, and so I definitely picked up on this. Um, I recorded a solo excuse me. I recorded a solo acoustic album in June 2021. Okay, now I'm going to repeat that because I think that's worth repeating. I recorded a solo acoustic album in June 2021. Really? I mean, it's not unheard of, but that is extremely respectable, because I have never recorded a solo acoustic album. Um, how did that go down? Did you just wake up one day and go, "Hey, I'm going to record a solo acoustic album," or was it something that you had
Well,
been
yeah,
planning?
kind of. I mean, I write. I mean, I usually write on the guitar or the piano. When I'm writing. I mean, I've written songs for bands. For films. So I've written in many different styles. And the I mean, but it's like the unplugged syndrome, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
some songs like Communication Breakdown just would never work. As an unplugged. But if something's heavily dependent on a nasty riff, forget it. But it was an attempt which I've also been kind of doing recently to look at all the stuff I've written down through the years. I mean, for other singers, girls, for younger people, younger guys, and also the stuff of when I was fronting Indians in Moscow, and sort of saying, well, what songs do I actually like the best, and regardless of the genre, the style, anything else, what do I actually want to play on the guitar? Somebody said to me, okay, play me a song, what do I play? because ultimately, I like the independence of being able to do it, um, completely without any assistance at all, not even plugged in. Um, it just puts a different kind of, and I don't know, it's just a different, not pressure is the wrong word, but it just brings it back down to what it is,
Hmm.
And I love working with Stuart, my dear, darling Stuart, who died a few years ago, who was my music partner, and he was a genius electric guitarist and just an all-round brilliant guy. And I mean, I miss all his world, but because he's not around anymore, I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I'd just rather sort of strip it right back down to nothing, you know. And I mean, failing that, you can just strip it down to less than nothing and not do it at all. But I mean that's a real test because I think there's so many people making music these days, and it's so easy to make very competent music, with all the equipment that's available. And I just think if something doesn't send shivers up the spine, for me now, at any rate, there's not much point in doing it.
Okay.
I'm not in the market for. Oh, that's great, but you're going like, yeah, so what? I'm
You
not
you don't
saying I'm. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
you just said something about shivers down your spine, and there's a word for that. What is that? Synesthesia or something like that? Synesthesia. Some musicians get that, and that's where you will
Is it
actually get
is it
a.
scintillation? Is it
s- I think it's
scintillation?
synesthesia. I'm not sure, but
Whatever
th-
that feeling is,
yeah,
we
it's
don't
a
know.
physical reaction. With
Oh,
me, it's I'll get goosebumps with certain types of music.
I get it. I get it a
You
lot,
get it.
and I mean,
Do
not just music from all, but it's from wherever is actually
right.
making that electric connection between your soul and the spirit of whatever you're receiving. Whether it be whether it be a painting or a child saying something that just really is just so gorgeously true. It hurts.
Right.
It's that feeling. For me, that's the gossamer lightness of life. That's the real spirit. And while people drag tanks and other forms of hell around this planet trying to um prove something, I'm going like, this is the most extraordinary paradox. The people who really don't understand what life is, and I don't mean in a religious sense, and I'm not being arrogant, but if you haven't experienced the impossible, lightness and fragility of being right on the edge of life, then you will seek other ways to gain power because you're not alive. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
So
with
you go,
this,
so you go, you earn medals, and I go, why? I don't give a shit. I seriously, I mean, this sounds, weird as well, but I mean, I have no interest in medals. Somebody gave me a medal. I've got a few medals for running marathons, for example. Well, that's okay. But if somebody wanted to it's like Dylan said, take that badge off of me. I don't need that approval. You know,
right,
Life's tough enough. I
right.
don't saddle me with society's approval. I'm not interested.
I see that you've got a couple of guitars there, and what I was thinking is after we wrap up here, I've got a couple of more questions on the next chapters. If you feel like playing a song, I'd love to hear it. So,
Yeah, no,
I'll
for sure. I mean,
okay.
what do you want? Do you want something a bit rocky or something a bit more laid back?
Anything that you felt like playing at the moment.
Any old shit. And yeah, then
Yeah.
maybe we'll do a couple more later. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
For those of you watching and listening, what we are doing right now, if you just got here, we are talking about "And Then It Was Now" by Christopher Guard, and of course, Christopher Guard is right here, and I have finished his autobiography. Left a copy of it at Mount Fuji. This is my second one, which is annotated. So there's one of these in Japan as well, and with my annotations. So and it was kindly accepted as a gift through a little bit of miscommunication there. But um, now, where chapter 4 comes in,
Sorry,
uh,
can I take 10, 15 seconds?
yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on pause, and I will see you when you get back.
I can put my diaries away now. Hey,
Okay.
all right. Can you see my guitar at all?
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna play something now?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
You want to ask a couple more questions? That's fine.
Okay. All right.
Go for it.
Okay, for people that just joined in, we are talking about And Then It Was Now. This is the autobiography of Christopher Guard. And right here with me is none other than Christopher Guard. And I have annotated the book with a couple of questions that I had as I was reading through it. And we are now up to chapter 4. There is a beautiful poem in this by your mother, Chris. Chapter 4 provides a really dramatic jump into stage life with some really brutally honest facts, which I'm not going to spoil today. But it really gives a honest insight into stage life, and stage um, is a very important part of your life in performing arts, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I started in playing David Copperfield, as you said, when I was 12 years old, and I was in the middle of a normal kind of academic school life, and which I continued with. But I did one or two things as a kid. So by the time I was 20, I'd mainly, I was really known for the bits of television that I've done. But when I left school, I had a university place, and I also had the opportunity to get an acting agent, and I had my equity card that you had to have back then. So I was able to kind of go off and have a career. Dad was no longer with us. He'd left. He was alive. He'd left home, and I needed money really. So I felt that to go down the road of acting was a better route. I wasn't that convinced that I wanted to be a stage actor, but I found myself at the National Theatre in Sir Peter Hall's first season. And he was a real maverick. He'd been at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and it was extraordinary what he did with that season. He really wanted to revolutionize the National Theatre, which had been run by, there's my dad and my mum and me, yes. In Chiswick House grounds, I think that was, yeah. But I mean, Dad was mainly a theatre actor. That was, that was his tradition, his convention. I got in kind of sideways really through TV. I was a natural in front of a camera, which I think for a lot of stage actors that was not cheating, but it wasn't. The small screen back then wasn't regarded as being terribly important. But by the early 70s it was, because for example, Peter Hall got in Jenny Agutter and Beryl Reid, who'd never gone anywhere near Shakespeare before, to play leading roles in his company. We still had the traditions of Laurence Olivier, who'd previously run the company. And so John Gielgud was coming in to play Prospero. So you had this mix, and you got in Dana Gillespie and Julie Covington, who were in Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar. They were big stars in their own right, brilliant singers. And so they were in the Tempest with all the rest of us to sing these goddess parts. I mean, it was a star-studded National Theatre, unheard of. Up until then, it had been maybe one or two well-known leading people, and everyone else would be kind of stable, stalwarts.
Okay.
Whereas this was, he wanted, let's get bums on seats. Let's make the National Theatre commercial. So we took some of the productions out to the shires. The idea being to go to places that wouldn't normally have the National Theatre on their doorstep. This was his whole ethos. And so it was an extraordinary time. I mean, there were a lot of disasters. Because a lot of us were very young, because two of the plays we were doing were Spring Awakening and Romeo and Juliet. And so all of the younger members of the cast, we were all there to be in those plays. But we also had smaller roles or less to do in The Tempest, because it was a repertory company, basically. So, yeah, that was, well, I don't know how much you want to spoil, but I mean, there were some very funny.
I'm not. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but I'm trying to keep you from spoiling anything too at the same time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's just that I mean, I'll leave it the rest of your vivid imagination. But Spring Awakening is very sexually graphic in places, and Peter Hall's idea, he didn't want to cut anything, cut nothing from Shakespeare, for example. So in The Tempest, there's a speech by a young dude called Francisco, right? He only has one speech. It's about 8, 9 lines, 10 lines. And he thought, well, maybe Kristen could do that, because we didn't have much, we youngsters didn't have much to do in that play. And I, God almighty, I had to stand around, hour after hour after hour with all these boring lords on this boring stage, because not all of Shakespeare is good. Some of Shakespeare is very, very boring. That's why I think he didn't write it all. I think he wrote the good stuff and other people wrote the other stuff. So, but Peter didn't want to cut anything. So in Spring Awakening, there's this very graphic scene, which I won't spoil. But I mean, it caused quite a few theatre seats to flip as people gradually, they realized what was going on, and they made their way out of the theatre because they thought, oh my God, I didn't realize that was happening. It gradually dawned on them, So it was a fascinating time. Yeah.
I absolutely loved this chapter, and this is one of the ones that I read at least 2, if not 3 times, and it's an absolutely beautiful piece here on stage, and the performing arts surrounding stage performances, and even the atmosphere, the behind the scenes, the culture, and we'll leave that up.
The spliffs.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. Yeah, it's got a little bit of.
I wonder if Shakespeare used or any of those dudes used marijuana. I think it was around. You could get it at the docks, and some
Oh,
of his
yeah,
some of his stuff is pretty, the fantasy, the imagination is extraordinary. And I'm not saying you necessarily need to, have half a bottle of brandy or a spliff to inspire you to write The Tempest. But I think there are probably moments when the candle's burning a bit low and it helps.
yeah. I think it's always had a role to play in creativity. Not anywhere near 100%, but I think probably a sizable percentage if we were able to calculate that.
And I think it's an interesting hypocrisy, arguably, that a lot of people who happily consume the work of geniuses who have quite clearly consumed things, done things, mismanaged things, in a way that society wouldn't approve of. So they're quite happy to, buy their work,
Mhm.
but they don't approve of the lifestyle. And I've sort of said, well, you know, you can't have one without the other.
Right, right.
Sometimes you can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if somebody turns around and says, okay, yeah, I did, but I didn't inhale, as you said earlier.
Right. That was a Bill Clinton quote.
Why this insane hypocrisy?
Right,
These
right.
substances exist. I mean, back in the 19th century, I mean, for example, Sherlock Holmes in the Sherlock Holmes stories used cocaine quite a lot. And
Oh, really? Oh, yeah,
yeah,
that's right. That's right. I remember reading that.
no, he
Yeah.
did, and he would inject it. I mean, and he would
Ooh,
use it. He would use it as a tool to sharpen his mind. He wouldn't eat; he'd smoke his pipe, but he didn't want anything to interfere with his mental processes. Um, so there's a living. Sherlock Holmes is still so incredibly popular, but that was the reality of him. And obviously, other people were using opiates, who were the romantic poets and whoever. They were. There was this stuff. I mean, Queen Victoria used laudanum, which is an opiate.
okay. Yeah. I
He
yeah, I had
loves it.
I hadn't heard of that one before.
Margaret Thatcher's doctor was apparently a heroin user,
Wow. Wow.
but they
Well,
didn't. He was a functioning heroin user. It didn't stop him doing his job. And this is the point I'm making. If you can afford to, buy the best wines, buy the best opiates, buy the best whatever, and you have the money and the lifestyle to afford that you don't end up on the street in a mess. That's where I wonder
right.
what by making all these substances illegal, it's a self-perpetuating problem. It doesn't solve anything.
Right.
They won't.
Right.
These things won't go away. They will
Yep.
not go away. And they're not
And
the problem. They're not the problem anyway. The problem is not enough love. That's the problem.
right, right. Well, and you know what? That pretty much sums up what I meant by the brutal honesty of how you depicted the culture in this particular chapter. Absolutely well done and very well said. And I admire you for not pulling any punches. I mean, it's really an amazing chapter. And for people that are interested in the arts and performing arts and stage in particular, um, I absolutely suggest that you pay very particular attention to chapter 4, which is titled Play in Chris's autobiography, and Then It Was Now by Christopher Guard. Now, on chapter 5, you mentioned Mr. Bayless, the teacher, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I thought it was interesting that you worked the Cuban Missile Crisis into this, um, because I actually had some family members in the 70s that still had canned goods stored in their basements and their attics, and I was very surprised to find out how absolutely concerned people were back then.
Yes,
And
absolutely. And we had a very similar thing at the beginning of the 80s when Reagan and Thatcher were locking horns with Russia.
mhm,
And I mean, there were adverts on television for these nuclear bunkers. And we had protect and something and survive, protect.
yep,
And so that the whole idea of nuclear war was actually, the mutually assured destruction was being sort of used as some kind of commercial vehicle. And there are people who, so we had it in the 60s in the Cuba crisis, yeah, of course, and then it all started again in the 80s.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, like, what the hell, you know? But it was, I remember the Cuba crisis so well. And it was, I mean, I was, my mum and dad talked to me. They told me things. I was lucky enough to sort of have an insight into things, even though I was what, 10 years old, 9 years old.
Hmm. Right.
Mr. Bayliss was amazing, but that's how scary it was. He took the partition back between class one and class two. They were the top two classes, and he took it upon himself. He was a lovely guy. I think of him now as old, but he was probably only about 35. But he was quite bold, and he used to take us for football. But he took it upon himself to explain what was going on, and that, I mean, I don't know what we were supposed to do with this information, but it made my blood run cold. I just
Hmm.
thought, oh God. So it's partly your blood runs cold because you think of, well, you try to imagine, I suppose, what it's like when you get that nuclear flash and
Right.
everything
Yeah.
and everything ceases to exist. But there's not
Right.
much point in imagining that. You might as well try to imagine what it's like at the moment when you die anyway. It's
Yeah.
impossible. So
Yeah. We
what he's
had.
really describing is the idea that these two superpowers can even get to that point where they've invested so much money in these useless bloody pieces of dog shit. And they're going, look, my one is bigger than your one. My one is shinier than your one. Well, my one's bigger than your one, and you're a piece of shit, and you're a piece of shit. Fuck you, you shit. Little kids were going like, okay, does anyone want to come home and see my guinea pig?
Yeah, right. Would somebody just like to play?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wow.
But then Robert Marshall, because people used to play war. So if you
Right.
wanted to start a new game in the playground, you just get by one other person at playtime. You go around the playground going, who wants to play underarm releasio? Who wants to play? And you get someone else to join him, and he maybe had three or four you'd play. And
Right.
it was like, who wants to play war? War. Oh, well, I don't mind playing war, playing war. But Robert Marshall, he was out in the playground going, he thought it was great. He said, okay, you be Cubans, you be Russians. I mean, we're only 9.
Right. Right.
Yeah, funny old game, isn't it?
Yeah, what it reminds me of here is we had nuclear war drills where the school alarm would buzz, and it was stop and drop. And what we would do is actually get under our desks, because you do know that after all, if a nuclear bomb hits San Francisco, you're going to be a lot safer under your desk, right?
Oh, really?
Right. Yes. All right. So, jumping up to chapter 6, song and dance.
Have it finished yet? Yeah, it's all over. Don't worry. World War
Right.
Three is over. Right. Anyway, where were we?
So, yeah, you can get
Um,
out from under your desk now and observe all of the destruction. So,
yes, geometric equations.
right.
Sit up straight.
Okay. So, jumping up to chapter 6, and again, we are discussing "And Then It Was Now" by Christopher Guard. And this right here, none other than Christopher Guard. I absolutely loved this book. Made me realize I can probably write an autobiography too. Not as good, but it is not impossible. Um, Now in chapter 6, it's titled "Song and Dance," and you describe playing David Copperfield on TV, and so much more. This chapter 6 to me, it felt like this could have been an entire book on its own. And I don't know how you restrained yourself from keeping this to just a chapter. It's got everything from a grim reveal, uh mentions smoking, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and then of course it mentions Alan Rickman. Um, and I'm wondering, with this chapter 6, you were obviously really on fire in writing this. The momentum was really going good into this book. And what I'm wondering is, did you have to restrain yourself, or did you actually write more of chapter 6 and have to edit it down?
To be perfectly honest, I can't really remember. I
Okay.
know that in my mind I had, because I wasn't really making lists, I was more making themes.
Hmm.
So I was thinking, well, chapter 5 will cover, I called it play, because it
Hmm.
was about playing and also about theatre and about
Right.
the whole, and song and dance is really about the musicals I was in.
Hmm.
I save all the stuff with my bands, with my more rock and roll world to later on. So this is about the musical I made in Vienna with Miss Taylor, with the musical I made in the West End with people like all sorts of extraordinary people, like Simon Le Bon was a boy from rugby school in the chorus at the age of whatever he was, 12 or 13. I was playing Flashman in the lead role in it was Tom Brown's School Days. And yeah, so I've tried to keep it to mainly to that world, musical theatre.
Right.
Because I had run-ins with musical theatre, didn't feel particularly comfortable there. I loved working with Stephen Sondheim, particularly. I mean, he was a genius. When I wrote the book, he was still alive, very much so. And I'm still in touch with Larry Gittard, who was in loads of, in the original cast of loads of Stephen's musicals. Um, and, sitting in the Klimt bar in Vienna with Steve Sondheim and other luminaries was extraordinary. He was a very down-to-earth, egotistical man, but with huge intellectual conceit, if that makes any sense. And I loved his company. He was so I don't know. There was never a stone unturned, and yet he was very sort of self-deprecating. And
Okay.
believe it or not, he had been warned off alcohol, because here's a man who wrote all the lyrics for West Side Story, and subsequently wrote all these incredible musicals, like Sweeney Todd and whatever. And he used, when we were recording the cast album for Little Night Music, he'd just be in the control room, lying on his back on the sofa, smoking his inevitable cigarettes, and he'd have a glass of whiskey beside him, and that was how he chilled and how he tuned in. Not when he's writing the thing at 9 in the morning, but there are different head states for different parts of the creative process.
Hmm.
So you do the bit where you go, I've got to do that, put that in there, nail that in there, that's got to be over there. Right, now I'm going to take a glass of whiskey and I'm going to lean back and go, does it work?
Hmm.
Have I fulfilled the dream? Have I made it happen like I want it to be?
Okay.
Anyway, he was warned off the whiskey because it wasn't doing him any good.
Okay.
And so what was he encouraged to do? Lo and behold, splits.
There you go. The
So
safer
he
alternative.
wants it.
Well,
So even Stephen,
yeah.
was on the splits, and there's some pretty interesting stories about him
Hmm.
in the book. And yeah,
Okay. Totally excellent chapter. Now jumping up to chapter 7, titled Mel, Hugh, and Barnaby Who. This chapter here opens with the very first two words, someone's name, Alan Rickman. And uh, if I can possibly spoil one thing, it includes the sentence, so I ended up in a young Hugh Grant's classroom as part of the one, and this is part of this chapter with wonderful illustrations and photos throughout. Did you really?
well, yeah, because I was at Latimer Upper School in Hammersmith, yeah, and
Hmm.
in fact I was the first really of that breed. That we Alan was about maybe 6, 7 years older than me. Hugh is about 4, 5 years younger, but we were all
Really?
round about the same time. And then my brother, who was in the Go-Between, and won the BAFTA award in the Go-Between. But I think when I was in David Copperfield, I was the first one to be on a screen. Suddenly everybody at Latimer knew who I was,
Hmm.
and which is a very strange feeling. But I hadn't really expected it to be like that. It's like you walk through the school gates, you were known by maybe 50 boys and a few teachers, and suddenly it was like, "Oi, copper knob," you know, uh, and stuff like that. Anyway, no, Hugh Grant, I was his form prefect when he was in 2H, because I was kind of just sliding off the official way things should be done a bit, and I was advised by my form master to maybe I was in the sixth form by this time, so if I became a prefect, it would keep me kind of on side with the more. Um, oh yeah, now that's interesting. Yeah, now that's a painting of mine of Craven Cottage, which is Fulham Football Club's ground. This is back in the days before they were in the Premiership, when you wouldn't get many people on a misty night like that. But Hugh Grant was a Fulham supporter and still is, very much still is. And so before he became Hugh Grant, because really, apart from the royal family, very few people are born famous. I mean, Hugh Grant was Hugh Grant. I worked with him in Barcelona briefly, and I knew him from being his form prefect when he was hilariously cheeky. And I didn't like doing that job, but I had to do it for a while. And so we knew each other at Fulham. And yeah, and then of course Four Weddings came along, and suddenly his life changed hugely and brilliantly. I mean, I thought he was fantastic in that film.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is that people go, "Oh my God, you know Hugh Grant?"
Right.
Well, yeah, but he's Hugh Grant. Before Four Weddings, he was nobody never knew who he was, or most people
Right.
did.
Right.
And that's the nature of fame. It just takes one big, you know, event, and
Mm.
suddenly everything can change. But you never know. You never know how it's
Mm.
going to fall.
Right.
So I think
Okay.
Hugh handled his career incredibly well. And as I say, I remember him when he was 12, and he had all the attributes that he brought to Four Weddings back then. He had a kind of guile and a cheek and an intellect and a just sort of, I don't know, it wasn't an arrogance. It was just self-possessed in a very interesting way. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, absolutely lovely chapter. I loved this too. I loved all of the chapters, but this one right here is very particularly interesting. Now, on to chapter 8, and the title of chapter 8 is "I Wish My Name Was Dick." And now, with your brother being named Dom, I would think that Christopher is a more common name in England, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is now. Yeah.
Okay, now, but it wasn't then.
Well, no, interestingly enough, when my mum and dad sort of wanted to give us all, I mean, it's very popular now to give people unusual names. You could call your child toilet seat these days, and no one would bat an eyelid. It's just, it's anything goes. But we're beyond the days of when you had to be called David or Stephen or Michael or John. So, but my parents wanted to give us not unusual names, but not typical names. So, believe it or not, when I was called Christopher, relatively uncommon. And if you
Right.
look back, before that time, but of course it became incredibly popular. I mean, to the point that it almost became, oh God, it's like you felt, oh, another Chris, yeah. And then Dominic was like, whoa, no way. I
Right.
mean, it was very tricky. And Dom didn't like that name at all, because people didn't really understand what it was, and he was called Dom, yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
that's where the title of that story that comes from. When we were sitting in a cinema watching Tarzan Goes to India or something, and it's in the book, and he says, there was a woman sitting next to us, and she said, "And what's your name, little boy?" And Dom said, "Dom." She said, "Tom?" "No, Dom." She said, "Don?" "No, Dom. I wish my name was Dick." that's, that's when he said it. He said, why
All
have
right.
you numbered me with this bloody name? And then there was a record recorded by a woman who became known as the Singing Nun in the 60s. And it was a hit. And it was called Dominica, right?
Right.
And it sort of went, Dominica, Nica, 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 la, 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 like that. And of course, Dom got hell in the playground because people were calling him Dominique, Dominicas, Dominicas hanging down. And he's going like, ah, what?
Now, jumping up to chapter 9, which is titled "We Know Something That You Don't Know." Now, I was actually tempted to read the opening sentence of this, but I'm not going to do it. And who was that song by that opens with "Girls, Girls, Girls"?
Oh yeah, I know the one you mean.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Did they do something like TV or they didn't have a lot of hits, did they?
Yeah, it was during,
Girls. I know the one you mean.
yeah, during the 80s. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
Well,
so chapter 9, you know something we don't know. You want to tell us just a little bit of anything about chapter 9 that you know that we don't know?
well, it does include my early crushes, my early flirtations,
Yep.
girls who broke my heart at the age of 7, then 17, and then 27 again. I even wrote a song about it called Seven. Um, when I was 7 in primary school, I looked across the classroom. I fancied you. I fancied you. Then I was 17, working in a bar, not seen you for years and years, and there you are. Every time I feel exactly the same. Every time I hear your name, I feel exactly the same. In other words, once they've got you, they've got you. And Julia always knew she had me. She had long blonde hair, blue eyes, absolutely gorgeous. So it didn't matter whether she was 7, like she was when I first saw her, or whether she was 17, she blossomed by then.
Right.
But it was the same. It was the same thing. And we were like, I don't know, it's a very awkward relationship. But no, the girls thing was like when I was 4 years old, and I didn't go to nursery school. I went straight into the primary school. So I'd gone from like literally being in my back garden, lifting up paving stones and looking at insects and just finding out the natural way how the world works. Lovely Ruthie who used to come and look after us. You could kind of smell her BO under her rather cheap perfume, but she was lovely. She had bright red lips and she loved me to death, and she was like our nanny. And I was quite happy there. And then it was like, oh, Chris, it's time to go to school. Oh my God, did I like school? No, I didn't. I mean, I grew to quite like it, but I was only 4 and I had to go from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And little boys were put in the playground with the older girls because there was this bizarre, nonsensical notion that girls of 9 and 10 would look after little boys as opposed to tormenting them, which is what they really wanted to do.
You talk.
You've just walked into the playground and you're going like, help, I want to go and look at centipedes and earwigs. I don't like it here. And suddenly there's 3 giants standing above you, probably only about 9, and they're singing in unison from a vast height. We know something you don't know. Like,
Oh, there we go.
what? And you say, you know something you don't. They're not going to stop because they know how it works. I don't. And I say, what? What? And they go, nose, which means you're being nosy. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. What do you mean? But you started it. And that was I think as I say in the book, I mean, when it comes to sexual politics, that's all you need to know,
Right.
It's like leave, kind of start this impossible situation where it's your fault and there's nothing you can do about it. And you're in a, forget it. Don't even bother. Just say, we know something you don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, that's it. I think I said what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was fuck off.
Right. Okay. You know what? Now that I do know this,
But that would have meant, I think I say in the book, that would have meant I'd have got I'd have got, because they used to cane back then. I'd have got caned on my first day, setting a new world record. I'd only been like 2 hours, and I got the cane. We know something you don't know. Fuck off!
Okay.
What?
Absolutely awesome. Yeah, now I'm gonna go back and read that chapter again because I was already laughing. Now I'm gonna be laughing my ass off when I read that again. That is too funny. So, now chapter 10, Jeeves. It was interesting to read how important pets were in the family.
That's my favorite chapter.
Is it? Yeah, I loved it. Yep, chapter 10, Jeeves. Here, let me flip over to that
Well,
one
the
here.
thing is, the thing about Jeeves, right? I think I mentioned him a few times in the book before I get to the Jeeves chapter, because, and I
You
say,
did.
I mentioned him, and then I say, but I'm gonna give him a chapter all to himself, which I decided spontaneously, because he's best off kept as far away from everybody else as possible. So he gets his own chapter, because he was, yeah, there he is with my brother.
With Dom.
With Dom. He looks,
Yeah.
I wish my name was Jeeves. But he looks quite innocent there. The thing is, he's a Jack Russell. He was a male Jack Russell. My mum and sister couldn't control him. I was the only one, really, Dom a little bit, but who really had any insight into his pathological tendencies, which were off the scale. I mean, he was born with severe criminal tendencies, and if you gave him an inch, he'd take several universes. He was like that. I mean, he really could vault the front gate, and I'd be halfway through my ancient history homework before I went off to, well, I'll leave Moira for later, and they said, and Mum, I'd hear my mum's voice, Chris, dog's out, which meant I had to abandon everything, run down to Stamford Brook Common at the end of the road as fast as I could. And Jeeves would be just a bit ahead of me. He had these annoying sideways back legs. And he'd get into the park and do as much damage as he could in about 18 seconds. So he'd bite a Great Dane's balls, piss on the jumpers for goalposts, the footballers' jumpers down for goalposts. He'd, what else would he do? Oh, yes, he'd usually roll. If he could find some shit, he'd roll in it. Why not?
No.
Oh no, they love it. The shit, box shit, even better. And he knew I'd catch him. So as soon as he saw me coming towards him, he'd go, all right, game's up.
Game's up.
I confess. So he knew exactly what he was doing. And I go, and everyone would go, oh, poor little Jeeves. I get hold of the wrist and I carry him back down the thing. And I say to him, I say, Jeeves, you fucking little boss. He didn't know what I was saying. I was nice to him. He was lucky that somebody invested as much time in him as I did. But because he was tricky, really tricky, especially because he was ready. See, when he arrived to sort of, because my dad had left home, so my mum was going out to work. So Jeeves had sort of partially come to sort of look after the house, hence the name, like Jeeves the butler. Big laugh.
Right. That's hilarious.
Like really. And
right.
I mean, he just made life far more complicated. And there was one time I'll just try and tell it. I had him, he was on a leash. See, the thing is, because he was small, and obviously the way dogs communicate with each other is usually through smell. They'll piss up a tree, or sometimes they'll actually shit up a tree, because that's even more of a message. It's like, I really love you. Hey, let's meet at 6:10 on the corner, or whatever they're trying to say. I don't know. Or maybe they're saying, have you read Shakespeare's The Tempest, and do you think he actually wrote it? They might. I know what I'm saying. So I've gone around when we used to rely on newspapers for our information. So I'd gone around Stamford Brook Station. Jeeves was on a lead. I was kind of ignoring him, and he was pulling. And I bought a copy of the Evening News, and I'm looking at the football results. I'm going, right, okay. Jeeves, stop it. Jeeves, what? Jeeves, stop it. And people are all flooding out of the station because it's kind of rush hour time. And then I was aware of a couple of people looking at Jeeves. People were staring at Jeeves. So I'm going, what the hell's going on? It's a big plane tree right by the station. And Jeeves has conspired to stand on his front paws and he's trying to do a shit up the tree.
Really?
To leave a message up the tree. So he's on his front porch, but his little legs up the back. The thing is, we'd had a birthday party recently, and Jeeves used to like eating balloons.
Ooh.
You know, so he'd pop a balloon. Arrgh! He hated everything, especially balloons. Arrgh! And then he'd eat the balloon. And so he's on his front legs, and I'm not joking, out of his bottom by Stamford Station is appearing a balloon.
Oh no.
So he's doing a handstand.
What?
He's doing a handstand with a green balloon coming out of his butt. So small wonder people were stopping as they came out of the station and going like, "What's that?" And I'm still looking at the paper going, "Geez, stop it! I'm here."
Oh my God.
He lived in a world of his own, as do I. So
Right.
we were well met.
I picked up on what you're doing here. You're tying this in together, and if for people that have not read this yet, I would suggest watching this discussion with Christopher Gard and I before and after reading this, because if you read this and then you listen very carefully to what Chris is saying, you're going to pick up on how he's tying these things in together here. So now moving up to chapter 11, which is titled High Time. Two words stood out to me here, being a fan of Doctor Who. Doctor Who. And, well, there's even more words. Sylvester McCoy, Sophie Aldred, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, Children of the Circus, Stephen Wyatt, Dee Sadler, Kenton Hall, Toya Wilcox, Ian Reddington, Rico Ross, Jessica Martin, Chris Jury, Deborah Manship, Glenn Samarco, Daniel Peacock, Dean Hollingsworth.
So that's Jan Samarco.
Yan. Okay, it's pronounced Yan.
Jan
Samarco. Okay. And okay, and I'll shut up right there. and there is a relation here with chapter 11. So I think that people that are fanatics about Doctor Who will definitely enjoy chapter 11 here, titled High Time.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about the making of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy and how it nearly didn't happen. And these stories are quite well known now.
Right.
So that it was one of those things in life where, you know, it was meant to be, and I don't know how the hell the thing got made in the end. I mean, with all the asbestos crisis at Television Centre and so on and so forth, all of which is quite well documented. But what is interesting as we talk, because I'm always interested in the here and now, because that's as far as we've got, as far as I can tell, is that we're all going to be meeting, or some of us are, on Saturday, just the day after tomorrow. We're all going to Wood Norton. It's a big country hotel to do a Doctor Who event. And Dee Sadler's going to be there, and Jan Samarco, and Ian Reddington, and Sophie, and me, and Sophie's going to interview us. And
oh, nice.
I don't know what this is on Saturday, just this day after tomorrow. I don't quite know what form it's going to take. But what I'm particularly excited about is Jan Samarco, who we touched on. Now, Jan, when he was in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, he was in it because he, like a lot of us at the time, were quite well known. And Jan was in a show called Adrian Mole. It's a series of kids' books by Sue Townsend, very, very popular books. And when they turned it into a television show in the 80s, Jan was cast in the lead. So he was incredibly well known, very popular with kids. I mean, it was like sudden fame for him.
Right.
And so he and I got on really well. He was younger than me. He was probably only about 17, 18 at the time. Also, he was very into music. He wasn't that impressed with the whole world of acting. I think he liked it in some ways, but he now works as a psychiatric nurse in a hospital. I mean, he got out of it. It just wasn't for him. However, and this is, I think, going to be a lot of interest to the Whovians, he's making his first public appearance, anything related to showbiz, at this event on Saturday.
Okay.
Took a
Awesome.
bit of bit of persuasion from me, I think, because and Barnaby Eaton Jones sort of said to me, well, you know, you and Jan are obviously getting on great, and you know, if you want to encourage him to come, it'd be wonderful to see him, and blah blah blah. And Jan said to me, well, I'm a bit nervous about it. I'm not quite sure whether I can face doing all that again, you know.
Right.
Because if you Google Adrian Mole, I mean, you'll see him there. I mean, so he plays WizKid in The Greatest Show.
Mhm.
But he was already beginning, I think, to feel maybe that that wasn't the career path he wanted to go down. So it's very interesting that after all these years, on Saturday, he's going to be actually part of a Doctor Who convention. And
Absolutely wonderful.
I'm really excited about that. I'm looking forward to seeing him. He's a very smart guy, and you know, I know we'll have a blast, whatever else happens. So,
Okay. Okay, beautiful. All right, so everyone interested in Doctor Who, check out Chapter 11, High Time. Now, moving on to Chapter 12, title is Art for Fuck's Sake. And now on this chapter, I love this so much. It's ranging from hilarious to shocking. It's got a little bit of nudity in it. Yeah, you got some nudity in a book chapter here. You know,
scary shit, I tell you.
yeah, it is. And you know, it's amazing that you managed to blend humor and education in a way like this, because you're telling tales of art in every manner, and you maximize the perfect use of words to do so. And this chapter right here is just so absolutely beautiful on its own. And is it okay to compliment you and call this chapter an absolute masterpiece of this book?
Okay.
Do you mind?
If you insist. Like a lot of things in my life, and I think I've tried to reflect it in the book, is that, you know, art took me by surprise in a way. I wasn't trained to be an artist. I've had one or two wonderful artist friends from whom I've learned, I think, in an osmotic sort of way. But I didn't really have any ambitions at all I still don't. I mean, I was offered to share an exhibition recently with a good friend, and it just, the timing wasn't right. And I do care about painting and everything. Oh yes, art for fuck's sake. That's it. I
I love the
well, I
chapter.
mean, but
Love
it's
the
still,
title.
as I explained in the book, I mean, art was not a big deal at Latimer. Yeah, there's all my paintings on the floor. I was trying to decide which to use in the book. Yeah, yeah. No, I know I've done some good pictures, and I've sold one or two just online. Not by design. I haven't really pushed anything. Because, you know, when you're involved in music and acting and these quite tough businesses, I didn't really want art to be any kind of commercial proposition. So it's a tricky one. It's difficult. I mean, some people say they almost prefer my art to anything else I do, and I'm going, oh, come on. I don't really think that's a fair sort of analysis, but I do enjoy art, and I love working with the kids in the art room at my daughter's primary school, where I ended up running this Friday afternoon art club. It was just purely, it happened organically. The headmistress had seen one or two of my pictures. She said, do you want to reinvigorate the art room? And I think she had visions of me sort of standing there like a wizard beret, you know, a little moustache, and I paint in the corner, and the kids, they come in and they say, oh, they watch the great artist. I'm going like, fuck that for a lark. They wouldn't want to see me painting. I usually end up doing it when I'm sort of half in the shower and half out, and I suddenly think, oh, maybe I'll do a picture. And I end up doing it with a glass of beer in one hand, a paintbrush in the other, and usually nothing on. So that wouldn't have been ideal for the kids. But it sort of evolved into something great, which was just directly interacting with these young kids and just giving them confidence, and, you know, not according to any plan, So little kids would come in because they'd been allowed to go to Mr. Chris's art club. It was just on a Friday afternoon, you know. It was like a treat. And they come in and they say, I say, "Are you all right, Ellie?" "No." What's the matter?" She said, "I don't know what to do." She's only 5, to which
Right.
I would say, "Neither do I."
Oh, there you go.
And then she'd say, "But you're the teacher." I said, "No, I'm not." And then immediately they think, "Oh, this is more like it." So that, you know, the confidence starts to grow. Oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fond of that picture. That's sitting on the harbour wall in Coverack, my beloved Coverack. Yeah.
Yeah, which is also the name of the next chapter, Harbor Wall. That's
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
So with Harbor Wall, you know, there's so much here that this chapter I think could have been an entire book by itself again. Here's another piece, sentient creatures.
Oh yeah, yeah. A
Yeah,
couple of
yeah,
bits. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Nice.
And Harbor Wall, this right here opens up with a picture of your mom.
Mum on the harbour wall. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
what the whole chapter's about, really. I mean,
yeah.
it's about all my early memories of everything I did, you know, in Coverack. When Coverack was a place where you went there because it was Cornish, um, and local people ran the bed and breakfast. You know, everything was relatively inexpensive, and you know, you were there on holiday, but it wasn't like it is now. Nowhere nearly as commercial. So it was just I mean, when we first went there, honestly, we went there on the old steam train. Took about 11 hours. I remember from Paddington, you know, we'd be bundled in a taxi in Hammersmith, and then we go to Paddington, and the whole thing was just sheer undiluted magic. Um, and then we'd arrive in Coverack, and then we picked up by a taxi that took forever. I mean, nobody would put up with that now, but everything was kind of happening that little bit more slowly. And we didn't have a car, so we just went everywhere. We went on the buses or we went on foot. And Dad would hire an outboard motorboat from the local fisherman, Frankie Daw. And there were loads of local fishermen who were still fishing for a living at that time. But during holiday season, you know, they would make a bit of money maybe by renting their boats out. So the boat would be ours for 2 weeks. My God, what a thrill. You know, so you'd wade out, you kind of get it off the moorings, you learn to tie the rope round the outboard, give it a quick and then the engine will start going and you're out of the harbor and you cross the water. I mean, my God, the elation, I can feel it even now. It's just so, you know, the smell of the petrol, the smell of the salt and the spray and everything else.
Yeah.
Oh wow, what? And then, you know, we went horse riding for the first time. I'd never done that before. At Farmer Harris's, it was like, you know, tuppence halfpenny for you just give the horse a whack on the bum and you just go out for as long as you liked, you know. And
Mm.
that's how I learned to ride. I ended up riding in movies and TV. Nobody taught me. I learned with a right little bastard called Red Rocket, beautiful pony, but a real feisty little sod, you know. So these are the things I attached to Coverack, and yeah, it was just amazing childhood, and and yet maybe only 2 weeks a year, but it seemed like forever, and it's still like that for me. It just stands still. Oh yeah, there it is,
There's
and
Red Rocket right there.
there's Farmer Harris.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not actually that. I think that's not Red Rocket. I think I was cheating a bit there. I couldn't find a picture of Red Rocket, but I mean
Okay,
it's yeah, but I mean it could be Red Rocket.
okay.
I didn't always get Red Rocket. I think I got another one. But anyway, they were great days, absolutely great. When, you know, there were just less rules, there was less health and safety, and I don't remember anybody coming to grief and I don't remember having any problems at all as a
Mm.
result of less health and safety. What I do remember is more people being kind of self-aware and in touch with the environment, and you learned by how to do things, you know, rather than how not to do things.
Okay.
Oh,
And
don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that, that, or that. Well, how the hell do I learn how to do anything?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So okay, so that's chapter 13, Harbor Wall, absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful. And it leads into the next chapter, which is titled Islands. And
Yes.
with chapter 14, now you've mentioned this a couple of times as we've been talking, and or you've touched on it. And do you actually believe that Kit Marlowe or Christopher Marlowe only wrote part of Shakespeare's plays?
Well, I think what I was saying was that I think he could very easily have been contributing to Shakespeare's plays. They were part of a very busy theatre company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when the pressure was on, especially when the Queen wanted more work, and there was a whole, we don't know. But I certainly don't think that I think that Shakespeare is well known because of his beautiful verse, his soliloquies, the stuff that we all remember and love. I don't think Shakespeare would be remembered at all if it was purely for his plots, most of which were borrowed anyway. They were pretty well-known plots. It was just the way that he developed them and how he used them to create very poignant and exciting situations. So I think somebody like Kit Marlowe, there's this argument that, remember when I was growing up, people were saying, oh no, Shakespeare didn't write anything, it was Francis Bacon. And they're going, oh no, it wasn't Francis Bacon, it was Kit Marlowe. I don't really think any of that's true. I think the truth is somewhere between all of that, which is that Shakespeare was obviously the mover and shaker. He was the main man. He was the rock star. He was the guy who got the credit. But just like there might be some great bands now, and people are going, oh, how much of Tomorrow Never Knows did Paul McCartney write, or how much of
Right.
did George Harrison play the guitar part on that, and you get all these songs credited to two people or one person, or whatever. The reality is very often not like that at all. It's how it ends up being historicized. So my hunch, I don't know, but my hunch is that especially some of the crap in Shakespeare, and there is quite a lot, especially the speech I had to speak as Francisco, which I think, as I say in the book, I mean, the moment I drew breath to start the speech, the audience started coughing, and they managed to stop coughing almost to a man and woman at the moment I stopped, because nobody wants to hear this bloke. He's got no vested interest in anything in the play at all. He's just one, and he suddenly says the only point of him is it's like a plot device, because he's saying, I think I might have seen your son alive when he was in the storm. I not doubt he came alive to land. Okay, you can stop now, folks. Okay, I've finished speaking. You can all stop coughing. Thanks a bunch. But I mean, so what I'm saying is that having spoken some of Shakespeare's lesser work, I just wonder whether sometimes, you can imagine a situation where he might say, look, we need some more stuff, especially the clowns, the comedy stuff, which is invariably deeply unfunny.
Ironically.
Yeah, exactly. And you just say, oh, for fuck's sake, can someone just write something for Stefano and Trinculo? I mean, I don't know, any old shit. Because I'm too busy writing about Ariel and Caliban. I'm writing this gorgeous speech for Prospero. And that's all wonderful, But the Lords, I just call them the boring Lords. I'm talking about the Tempest here, which is one of his great plays. And they're terminally dull.
Terminally dull.
Yeah, you really have to struggle to make and you can hear people go, in Caliban and all the weird apparitions and everything, they all come on stage, everyone's going, yeah, come on, rock out. And then the boring Lords come on and they go, oh my God, I've lost my sound, oh no. And I have to stand there waiting to say, sir, he met.
Yeah. Right. You're making me start coughing here just thinking of it.
But I mean, that's a long answer to your question, but I that's just my hunch. I think it's highly likely,
right,
given the pressure that those theatre companies in Stratford and in London were under, to come up with a lot of stuff. And given that, Shakespeare is called a bard because he was a poet.
right.
And his great work is the poetic stuff. you know, the blank verse, the beautiful soliloquies that we all know. And well, I don't know what else we do with them. We know them and either love them or hate them.
Right.
You know, when Iago says, and what's he then that says I play the villain? When this advice is free, I give, and honest, probable to thinking, and indeed the cause to win the more again. You go like, whoa, that's cool shit.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how you say that speech, the rhythm, the meaning, the whole fluency of emotion, Machiavellian workings, the whole thing is just sheer genius.
Absolutely. Okay.
But I don't think the same can be said of some of what is attributed to Shakespeare. So although it's got his name on it, I'm thinking,
Right.
I think Ringo wrote that one.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're on. There's so much, so much in arts and performing arts where the writers are not given enough credit. And in some situations, like this here, could possibly be that they were not credited at all. So, I found that point of view to be very interesting. And for people that are just checking in here, we are discussing "And Then It Was Now" by Christopher Guard, and 199 pages of an absolutely awesome autobiography, which I loved. And I did some annotations here, and we are now on chapter 15. Getting near the end here. Hobbies. And see,
Hey,
when you and I last talked, I asked you if you had any hobbies like stamp collecting, and I kind of thought that you were, and this does confirm that you are a philatelist. And now that you have bared your heart and soul on philately, um,
but
actually,
I'm not a philatelist.
you're not.
Oh,
Okay,
just because there's some stamps. I mean, I'm an ornithologist.
right,
I mean, that's really what my hobby was. It was because of my cousins. They were ornithologists.
right,
So I
right.
inherited that from them.
Hmm.
Although, I mean, I think my brother and I did briefly get into stamp collecting. I mean, I think
Did
at
you?
that
You actually really did.
a bit, but
Yeah,
well, it was, but
you
I
were
mean,
never
I'd never really got hold of a penny black, you know, which would have been worth £1 zillion. So
right.
I lost interest.
Yeah. Well, I joke about the stamp collecting because that's actually the second time we touched on this, and when I saw the stamps and on this chapter, I
No,
was like,
you're
oh,
right. You're right.
and only to find out that right,
My
you are
apologies.
actually technically not a philatelist, but what I enjoyed very much on this chapter is that it goes deeply into music, as being a hobby, and that this was another chapter which I very much enjoyed. Um, you're talking about picnics, and Dom has more beautiful artwork from you. Road to Somewhere.
Yeah, I like that picture. That was Wormwood Scrubs, near where I used to live in London. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that one works. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's like I like pictures being a bit. I don't know what I like about them. It's like, hmm, I think you got to please yourself first. But I also like never quite knowing what I'm going to do. I have a, I have a sketch. I have a sort of idea, but I don't like to make it too easy for myself.
Hmm.
So like I'll sketch something in, and then I'll get a bit of a palette of colors, and then just go for it. As I said, usually with no clothes on.
And a
until
paintbrush
until
and a paintbrush
until I
in
put
one hand.
and
Right.
many's the time I put my paintbrush in my beer and vice versa. So you know,
All right. So jumping past hobbies, and no, if people are reading this to look for any aspects of philately, you're not going to get it. So, but absolutely excellent chapter. And moving on to 16 and 17, all roads lead to Acton, parts 1 and 2. Now, these two chapters here, I believe, could have also been an entire book. This right
Yeah,
here,
there's a lot
it,
in there. Yeah.
yeah, it's so much in here. Um, uh, Z Cars, uh, I Claudius, Doctor Who, even the band Bloog, and
Well, but
you,
just to say, can I just say it's
yeah,
for us, it's Z Cars, which
oh,
Brian Blessed was in. That was his first book,
exactly,
and then the band was called the Blues,
the
as in
Blues,
blues, which I actually got from the Dr. Seuss, who wrote the Cat in the
yeah,
Hat and all that.
yes, uh-huh,
It's one of his books. It's got these fantasy creatures in it who are called the Blues, and we were
right,
looking for a name for the band at the time, so that's where we got it from. Yeah,
really, okay. I wouldn't have thought of that. And I
yeah.
did, I also did not know that over there you pronounce it Z cars, because here, since we don't get it here, and a few people have heard of that. I know it was popular in the UK, and I think that unfortunately a
Long
lot of
time,
episodes.
yeah, a long time ago, but it's
Yeah,
still people still remember it. Yeah.
I think weren't some are some of the episodes missing? I
Oh,
think
probably, yeah. Well, it's like some of my early stuff is missing because back then, tape was so expensive. The old
right,
VHS or whatever they were using, they were extraordinary the amount of stuff that's been lost, just completely wiped. They'd wipe
right.
it so they could start again. I mean, studio time was so expensive back then. That's why we'd work for maybe a week, 2 weeks in before they built the North Acton rehearsal rooms. Um, which was a purpose-built 8 floors for everything the BBC was doing, which was quite extraordinary. So you'd have everybody from very well-known comedy act like Morecambe and Wise to you'd have Pan's People, the sexy dancers from Top of the Pops. You'd have David Bowie going up in the lift. I saw him there one time. He was making some play there. And all these people were all on the 8th floor in the same canteen, all having lunch at the same time. And we're all involved in different, it might be a serious drama, it might be as I say, a comedy show, any number of things, all in this same purpose-built block. Before that, it was just you'd be at a church hall or some scouts hut or something, just anywhere where they could put a bit of tape on the floor. You'd have everything sort of mocked up, and you maybe get 1 or 2 days actually at television centre to film the thing with these huge, great, Dalek cameras following you around. It's a totally different way of making making TV, but kind of a really good discipline as well, because it was like a complete cross between theatre and film. So you're on screen, but you're also having to do it basically all in one. There are very few stops, so you just keep going, and yeah, it made it kind of exciting, adrenalized.
Okay. Now,
Mm.
moving into chapter 18, telling tales. And I found it was perfect, the way that you opened this chapter with, and I'm quoting, "I cannot tell a lie," unquote. Um, because it's really brutally and graphically honest. And I'm wondering, there was something you mentioned in here that I am not familiar with. It's called the zealously, or you referred to it as the zealously guarded BBC Club. What is that? If you don't mind me asking.
I love after all these years, you know, a guy in San Fran saying to me, "What is that?
Yeah, what
What
is
the
that?
what the fuck's that?" Hey,
Yeah,
just give
what
me
the
one
fuck is
second.
that?
Give me 1 second. I'll come back and tell you if they allow me back in. All right. If you allow me back in, and that's a
Yeah,
hint.
okay. Yep. All right, we're gonna pause. All right. All right. That
Hey, hi, Greg.
good time for a break there. Okay, let me make a note on
Well,
zealously
where we
guarded.
paused.
Yeah, yeah, I'm making a
Yeah,
note on
sorry,
that
sorry
now.
about that. I hope you don't mind. I've got a restless ass.
Yeah, I was glad to get a break there for a sec.
I
And
mean,
we're
seriously,
almost,
even in school, I found it very difficult not to concentrate mentally, but I found just being sat, for 45 minutes at a stretch, very, and the teacher says,
yeah.
will you sit still? I'm going like, I don't want to. And then, 30, 40 years later, you're going to the doctor and saying, I've got a bad back, so I'm going like, and I'm saying, well, it's your bloody fault for telling me to sit still.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was good to get up and stretch my legs there for a minute.
Mm,
Okay,
mm.
so uh 3, 2, 1. And yeah, just what exactly is this club? Put me in the
Well,
know.
so the BBC revolved until, I mean, when I was making Doctor Who, we still had BBC Television Centre, which was the massive hub of the BBC. It's where there were 8 studios. All the big shows were made there, huge car parks. I mean, it still exists, but it's mainly, I think some of it's actually still kind of part of the BBC, but it doesn't really function in the way it used to. And everything was made there. And you had to get in. The weird thing was, right, you had to, so you're cast, yeah, as an actor in a play at the BBC. And then when it comes to filming it, you go up Wood Lane in Shepherd's Bush, and there's these gates and these big commissionaires, with medals, and they should have probably still been in the army. And they go like, what do you want? You go like, what do you mean? I said, well, so what do you want? I said, well, I'm going to work. Yeah, oh yeah, where's your ID and all this?
Really?
I said, I'm in Claudius. I what? I said,
Wow.
if you're one of the leggy dancers from Pan's People, you go like, all right, love, okay, and you go, or if you're one of the thousands of bureaucrats who work there in all various departments who had permanent jobs at the BBC. So you'd be a secretary or a PA or a this or a that or the other, a decider, and you had offices in this huge building. But if you were coming in to do the thing which supposedly mattered quite a lot, which was to perform in a production, you sometimes really struggled to get in, even though your name was supposedly on a list. So you said, go in there. So you go into this little glass booth by the side of where the cars went in. And they go like, okay, name. And the whole attitude was as if you were trying to break into, I don't know, some
Hmm.
place you shouldn't be. So sometimes it became very, very irritating. I did it actually one time because I was young and I probably, I mean, they just didn't. Other people probably just didn't like me on site. I don't know, but but no, it was a struggle. And there's a
Okay.
story attributed to Anthony Hopkins that he was, he worked up there quite a lot, and he was trying to get in one day. I think he still lived or was based in Wales, and he was asked these questions, and they said, "Yeah, where are you going, and what's your name, and what's your doing?" And he said, well, if you don't want me here, I'll go home. Don't give me that shit. I'll fucking go home, man. Yeah, well, go home then. And he did, and he drove all the way back to Wales.
Wow.
Yeah, but fair enough.
You're
I mean,
right. Right.
I got one of those guys to take his he started taking his jacket off to have a fight. But the BBC Club was a similar story. So if it was supper break, yeah, so you'd go
Hmm.
and have your supper in one of the canteens, and the same story, people from all different productions. It might have been Top of the Pops or Play of the Month, you know Morecambe and Wise or whatever it was, and you'd all be in the same world. And loads of people gravitated towards the BBC Club, which was a great big club with a bar. But you had to be a
Really?
member. Yeah, it
Right.
was a big, yeah, it was a big, it's just a social hub. Go there and have a quick drink. So you walk in there and you might see people playing disciples in the life of Jesus was hanging around, or there might be, I don't know, whoever. But usually it was made up of mainly people who were just normal people who were doing jobs in admin or secretarial, or they were you know, the part of they weren't the performers necessarily, because we performers, unlike at ITV, at Elstree, at places like that, you got no kind of pass. There was no day pass. You couldn't get a pass. So in order to get into the BBC club, and you wanted to get into the BBC club at least for half an hour, um, you had to be signed in by a member. So you'd ask to be signed in by, you'd say, "Oh, could you just sign in?" You didn't bother about it too much.
Okay.
So I did. So that's what I did. That was my trick. I finally realised this might be what you're getting at, because I'm thinking, how do I get into this damn place? And there's a bloke standing right in front of you. But you got out of the lift, you're walking towards him, and it would be like, "Pass." "No, I haven't got a pass." "Who's signing you in?" "I've been signed in already." "Where's your name?" "No, you haven't." "Bugger off." So, and I developed this new tack of becoming a neurotic assistant floor manager. So I'd come out of the lift and I'd advance very rapidly towards the geezer, the gatekeeper, and I'd say, "Right, excuse me, have you seen Christopher Guard?" "Who?" "I'm looking for Christopher Guard. Where is he?" "We need him now. He's due on set. Quick." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I've got to get him. Hang on a minute. I'll be back in a set." That worked.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I sort of sweated blood because I was looking for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely hilarious.
So you kind of let me go in, and that once you were in, you were in. You could just disappear among the, you could hide behind Anthony Hopkins or Robert Stevens or whoever else happened to be dropping out the bar.
All right. Okay. Now, chapter 19. We are wrapping it up here. Working for a living. Yeah. Working for a living. And I'm a little confused here because I thought that choosing as a career as an actor meant that you just have lifelong fame and massive wealth just almost instantly. And
Well,
you're gonna have the girls of your choice to sit alongside you, shotgun in the sports car of your choice, and
yeah.
for you to say that that's not reality, I'm wondering, is this chapter just a parody?
Well, I mean, I think what you just described is a parody.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, when people hit the bong, you hit the big heights, it is a lottery. I mean, there's always it depends. It depends. I mean, you can do lots of wonderful work and be very well thought of and all the rest of it, but not necessarily get that one big hit. Like Jumping Jack Flash, and or whatever it happens to be. So I think that, I think what I'm talking about in that chapter is partly jobs that I did kind of do to fill in gaps, because I was lucky enough to get off to a great start, and I was in a lot, leading roles in TV and film, and my deal with my agent was, well, look, I don't really want to do a theatre job here. I'd rather have the time off to be with my kids. So I think I'll just hang out. I'll take the risk. I'll take the gamble, and I'll wait. I'll back myself. And when another cool leading role comes along, which always tend to pay a lot better, I'll be there and available for that. So, I mean, there were times when I thought, yeah, maybe I've just, I wanted time with my band as well. The band
Right.
tended to cost more than I made, and so there were times when, like, we went out painting and decorating. That was hilarious. I mean, I painted the front of my house, little house in Chiswick, and the woman next door, who was an opera singer, I painted mine the cream color, and she said, "Oh, Christopher, would you paint my house?" She was called Tanya. She was lovely, and she wanted her house pink, so I painted it for her. Yeah, why not? And
Pink.
my brother-in-law, pink. Yeah, my brother-in-law Ralph, who was playing bass in my band, first real proper band I've been in, punk band, and we had a residency at the Windsor Castle, where fights used to break out on quite a regular basis. Because back then you couldn't keep pubs open after 11 o'clock, but we had an
Right.
extension because of the music. So it would suddenly fill up at 11 o'clock, and then we wouldn't go on till about 10 to 11 to make sure we had a big audience. But most of them were so drunk they usually ended up punching each other, which was perfect. Which was perfect for our punch man. I do remember a couple of geezers sliding around in this sort of beer sludge in front of us. And I'm going,
beer sludge.
yeah. Literally, they couldn't stand on their feet. They were so busy trying to hit each other, they kept falling over. It was glory. So yeah, why did I say that? Anyway, I've gone sideways.
Okay, well, chapter 19, working for a living, and this really does give an insight into Chris's experience in arts and performing arts, with a lot of very interesting and on target brutal honesty. I think is the best way that I can.
I think a lot of the time in that working for a living. I mean, it's quite funny. I mean, I'm talking about things we did as kids. You know, like these little museums where we used to kind of kidnap people and drag them into our house to look at our little propelling pencils, and the cat who was hiding under the bed or whatever else it might have been. You know, I mean, we were just that was just to make a bit of extra pocket money.
Right.
So a lot of it's about that, really. It's just what kids do. But at the same time, I think there's an insight into, you know, it wasn't always great with mum and dad. I mean, dad had good times, bad times. That's how I was brought up. You know, it was a tricky sort of one because he, you know, dad was very, very successful, you know, for quite a long time, and then for various reasons things got tough, you know, and it was psychologically they got tough for him, very difficult to deal with, and I think it impacted on me differently from my brother and sister, but I'm not saying they were any less affected when dad left, but it did leave it left a hole that we were so busy. Yeah, there we are, you see, look, now dad was that's how I remember dad, you see, positive, enthusiastic, and with his little lad on his bicycle. But but unfortunately my sister was only 7 when dad left home, and she never really got that best of him, you know. He became disillusioned, he became disappointed, I don't know, he started to panic. I think panic is probably the word. He had no need to. He should have just. And then there was the whole thing of the rock and roll had arrived, and dad was about 3 or 4 years a bit late for that, or early. You know, he was sort of old school. When he went to RADA and broke away from this puritanical religious background, he was a maverick. He was rock and roll. And within a very short space of time, Laurence Olivier had turned into Marlon Brando, you know, and the crooners had turned into the Beatles, and it was a whole different world.
Right.
And you know, dad was still listening to Songs for Swinging Lovers by Frank Sinatra. And that was quite a breakthrough for Frank Sinatra because he suddenly gone a bit rock and roll, but it was still very comprehensible for my dad. Right. You know, it was conventional. So when, as I say in the book, when we listened to Revolver in 1966, the Beatles album that I was given for my 12th birthday, dad loved, and we listened to it together. And I loved my dad. I wanted him to like what I liked, you know. But he could be very critical, and so he listens to Yellow Submarine and Eleanor Rigby and goes, yeah, great. You know?
Right.
I listen to those and I think, well, they're both kind of novelty numbers, really. You know, they're not band numbers. There's not a guitar on Eleanor Rigby, clever though it is. But when it came to songs like Taxman and, you know, Dr. Robert and tracks like that, dad's like, he just doesn't get it. Doesn't get it.
Right.
And then we get to the end and we get to Tomorrow Never Knows. And this is just classic. And this is a bit of a spoiler, but it's so worth mentioning because, you know, my mum worked with Spike Milligan and Peter Sellers. He was in the Goon Show. George Martin worked with those dudes. So there's this kind of weird connection between the Beatles, their comedy, their music, and also with my parents, because when we listened to Tomorrow Never Knows, we thought there was something wrong with the
record. I get that.
And so, no, seriously, I mean, that's where our ears were tuned.
Right.
So we take it back to the independent spinning disc record shop on the Chiswick High Road.
Oh, really?
We went in. I remember Saturday morning, we walk in there. My dad says, "Excuse me, I think there's something wrong with this record."
Oh, wow.
And this is Lennon, he's most groundbreaking so far. So the guy, he had a huge beard. He went, "There's a tiny little shop, you could hardly get in, it was so skinny. There's a little booth still inside." And he's going, uh-huh, 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 mm-hmm. Well, what's wrong with that? And we said, "Oh, so it's meant to be like that." My dad said, he said, "Yeah,
What?
of course it's meant to be like that." Anyway, fast forward, and by some glorious nemesis, my dad is performing at Broadcasting House in King Lear, playing Edmund. "Oh, so don't call," like this, and the Beatles are recording "I Am the Walrus." And while
Really?
they're recording "I Am the Walrus" at Abbey Road, Lennon thinks, "Oh, we need some more stuff for the outro. Oompa, stick it up your chumpa." It's a very long outro. It's kind of the same sort of world as Tomorrow Never Knows. It's Lennon being very experimental, and they're having fun with the tape and everything else. So they turn on radio, whatever it was then, the home service or something, and live on the radio is this performance of King Lear. And that, they just recorded it straight away and it's on "I Am the Walrus." So my dad now gets a credit on "I Am the Walrus."
Beautiful.
I mean, what a
Absolutely
glorious
awesome.
irony. Having said,
Yeah.
"Excuse me, I think there's something wrong with this record." I said, "Well,
Right.
I'll stitch you up, mate. We're going to put you on "I Am the Walrus." Bad luck.
You know, chapter 20, a sort of an ending, it seemed to conclude what I had been thinking all throughout this entire book, all the way to the epilogue, "Am I in it?" And you could have gone on absolutely forever. Now this is, or I'm not saying that. I'm asking you that. I believe that you could have gone on forever, and it's 199 pages.
Oh,
Make
I love that picture. I'm not saying because I did it, but it's because it's Hammersmith Bridge. I love that bit of the River Thames.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's like a friend of mine bought that picture. I haven't sold many pictures, and I haven't really tried to. Oh yeah, no, that
right,
I like as well.
right.
That's the
Absolutely
river over the
beautiful.
road from Fulham Football Club. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay,
so you see, when I paint stuff, there has to be a bit of, I don't know, something, a bit of love in it, really, or
right.
something. Yeah.
Well, the love in this entire book itself comes through loud and clear, and I'm wondering how much time did you spend writing this? Is this something that you worked on for several years, or was it
No,
several? No, really.
no, 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 no. No,
And
I mean very much the opposite, really. I mean, once I started, I wrote it in about 3 months.
oh wow, no way.
Hmm.
And did
I mean, that's kind of because I wanted to. Well, the way it starts with, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this, or shall I do
right,
this?"
right,
It's a kind of stop-start sort of thing. And then when I get up to speed, it flows quite rapidly. And I mean, of course, there was an editorial process. I had to, allow that to happen, with the publisher and everything, but not much change. I went back in. I had second thoughts about a few things, but it was mainly to do with timing, rhythm, how long paragraphs were and stuff like that. But I tried to get the real, I don't know, I was sober as a judge. I was getting up in the morning and I just said, "I'm going to do this, and I'm going to give me, on average, maybe 10 till 1, 10 till 2." I mean, I was averaging anything between 1,000 and 2,500 words a day for 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 that whole period, and I barely stopped,
okay,
because if I don't do it like that, I won't do it at all.
okay. Was there any part of it that you had to edit down, or is this the whole thing right here?
No, I don't think I really edited much down at all. I mean, that's pretty well how it was. I mean, incidentally, yeah, the odd word, or I might think, oh, that's better there, or that's better there. But no, I really tried to make it a complete reflection of how my brain works, you know,
Okay.
how the wheels revolve. And I mean, it's not a comfortable place to be sometimes in my head, um, especially now I'm so old, because because I mean, my brain feels like it's still working as well as it ever did, but you've got much more information, you know, on in your in those rooms, you know, all those rooms in our minds, you know.
Right. Right.
It's interesting you're saying this, and as I said before, I mean, I thank you very much for your positivity and enthusiasm, because
Oh, my pleasure. My
I
pleasure.
know,
And
yeah, no, I
yeah,
mean, really, I mean, it makes a big difference. I wouldn't be here talking to you if I didn't personally think that what I've written is good. You know,
right.
I really wouldn't.
Well,
I'm not interested in self promotion for its own sake. It's got to be. I mean, I have friends who've read this and just gone, "Oh, please write more, please write more." I
yeah,
can't get enough
yeah.
of it. You know,
But you know,
it's
I
like going to see your favorite stand up. You know, and you may be
right.
only in a room of 100 people, but it's just being able to keep people connected and that really does interest me. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
maybe I mean, I know I've got to write more. I mean, whether it's going to be more like this or whatever it's going to be, I had half a thought, because I say at the end something about, you know, not being quite sure what's going to happen. I don't know. Oh, I say my soul aches. Yeah, no, yeah. I just wonder whether I had this idea of writing something which was not so much about what has happened
mhm.
as what could happen,
Nice.
and making this sort of like, so it's real, but it's more to do with anticipating what could be about to happen. So I'm sort of imagining things, and then
Right.
I can roll back to where those ideas came from, maybe.
Well, you know, where you opened with, you were talking about your peers around you saying that you should do this, and it in after reading it, it's extremely obvious to me that, you know, they were right. Because this is one of the most enjoyable autobiographies I've ever read. You know, I will never forget it. It's extremely unique. Um, I don't want to use the word simple. I think easy reading is probably the best way that I could describe it. It's easy reading where it keeps you wanting to go on. It's like, okay, well, all right, and then what is next? And what is this next chapter about? And the thing that I loved about it was that your humor throughout it is just absolutely wonderful. It's an entertaining piece. You know, it's historical because of all of the things that you've done. You know, the names that I could just drop here, and I'm not going to do it. You know, we've touched on a couple of them. You know, it is absolutely historical, but it's also entertaining highly. You know, by me saying that I think I pulled some muscles in my cheeks from grinning, I'm actually not kidding. Because I remember my wife looking at me once going, "What are you reading?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's the autobiography." And she said, "Well, you must be enjoying it because you've been smiling all along." And you know, I really appreciate the opportunity of being able to talk to you about this. Now, hopefully someday I can get you to autograph this because we live so far apart. And I'd like to buy you dinner or something someday, Chris, because after reading your autobiography,
Okay, all right.
you know,
I'm booking the plane now.
okay. All right. Here, let me text you my address.
No,
Yeah.
well, but that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, what are the I love fish. I love prawns and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. We have absolutely wonderful seafood over here. The
I have
California.
a feeling you did, yeah.
Yeah. And what you would like if you came to the Bay Area, if you come anywhere around California, just let me know and I can meet you there. And we've got some good food over here. But one other question on this book. Uh, you met Elton John, right?
I did meet Elton, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
well, I mean, it was when my brother was working on a movie with Richard Burton, because my brother had quite a career. But after he won the BAFTA award in The Go-Between, he then made Picnic at Hanging Rock, and he was quite, he was headhunted for quite a few movies in his teens. And there was a guy called Mike Hewitson, who was part of Elton John's entourage, one of his, backup team,
right.
who was working on this movie with Dom. And I was making the Chester Mystery Cycle, I think it was, with Michael Gordon, and Tom Courtenay was in it up at the BBC. Elton had not long bought, his house in Windsor,
Hmm.
great big pile, it's a modern but big, sort of with all the usual accoutrements. He was going through the worst time really, because it wasn't that long after he really, he'd pressed the button for his super fame. He'd gone from being, you know, slightly balding Elton playing a nice ballad, and they'd had a hit, and then suddenly he turned into this.
Right.
So he was on a European tour. Um, the house, it was February, I think, January, February. It was very cold and grey. I remember that. And my brother said, Mike had said that Elton had said that, he said, oh, Mike just, he just used the house, for fuck's sake, it's just sitting there.
Really?
He hadn't been a superstar for long. It all
Right.
happened very fast, So, but he'd already become. I mean, I think this was, kind of Rocket Man time, and must
Okay.
have been early 70s, and yeah. So Mike just said, oh, if you want to, Mike said, oh, if you want to come over at the weekend, Elton will be away. He's on the, he's on tour. So so we said, okay, we'll go. So we went over and we were staying at Elton's place for a couple of days. It was Kiki D, who was the singer, part of his only ever number one. Don't go breaking my heart. She was over there hanging
Okay.
out and stuff, and there were just people there, his pianos were there. I tinkled on his piano, and there was the big room where there were the boots from the movie Tommy up in the games room. There's a bar football table up there. It was
Right.
just a big while, Reg Dwight had suddenly made it, he'd become very rich and he bought this place. But I think at heart he was still very, I don't know, he was confused. I think he was drinking a lot, and he hadn't come out. He was still closet gay,
Hmm.
although everybody knew, you know, what his sexuality was by anybody close to him. And he was also begun to do quite a lot of coke, I think. And he was a mixture of very insecure, very successful, and kind of using stuff to kind of get him through. And anyway, so we're all over there at the weekend, and it was all very laid back. There's nothing particular going on. It was too cold to play tennis. I don't remember it being anything really. It's a huge place. And anyway, Mike suddenly comes in on Saturday evening, I think it was, and says, guys, yoo-hoo, Elton's coming home, and he's not in a very good mood.
Oh no. So,
So he
so,
just he literally just called Mike and said, as far as I remember, he'd said, look, he was homesick. He wanted
right.
to come home, and he just wanted a bit of home cooking. And he's in the middle of this mega tour, kind of pretending to be Elton John. He was Reg Dwight, okay?
Hmm.
He invented this, like people do. And of
Right.
course now he's very happy with who he is. But I think it was at a time when he wasn't
Right.
particularly comfortable with himself. And
Yeah.
so of course we all think, oh fuck. I said, should we go? And Mike said, no, 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 it'll be okay. It'll be okay. I said, right, well, when's he coming back? He said, well, he's only been in, I mean, he was only in Belgium or France or somewhere. He wasn't far away, it's just a quick hop over on the plane.
Right.
So he was back within a couple of hours. And Mike said, no, 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 he'd like to meet you. So, okay. So he was absolutely sweet as pie. Very nice. Very
Awesome.
sweet. All he wanted to do was we went into the little staff kitchen, tiny little place off the main dining area, as I recall. And he just wanted greasy fried eggs and chips. and brown sauce, you know, proper home cooking. So
The
we all
simple
sat
things
around,
in life.
yeah, so we all sat around this little table in this little kitchen with Elton eating fried eggs and chips. It was, and that was it really. Except he said, "Does anyone?" You know, he's shy guy. He was shy. So he was shy,
Right.
very shy.
Just
And
a
he said,
normal person.
"Well, one, yeah, but kind of not." You know,
Right.
I mean, because he was a superstar. He had this massive alter ego. You know, this persona and all the costumes and all the and all that. But then he still was coping with his real self. You know, trying to come to terms with how to reveal what he was to whoever. And I mean, it was I think it was a very difficult time for him. But
Yeah.
he was brilliant at bar football because he said, fancy a game of bar football? And I said, yeah, because me and my brother were pretty good at bar football. You know, it's the game where it's like a table you play. And he had a bar football table in his games room. So we went up there and I thought, right, I'm going to beat Elton John at bar football. Did I? Did I? Fuck. He was brilliant. Talk about pinball wizard having a supple wrist. No, he was very, very good and very competitive. You know, really spot on.
Okay.
You know, good pianist, very, good wrists. He was very, very clever guy. But yeah, I mean, that was my memory of him, and
Okay.
it was lovely to meet him, really. But there aren't really any stories apart from the fact that
Right.
we had fried egg and chips, and we had,
Well,
I,
that's
I,
that right there is the best story that could be. And thanks for telling me that. You know,
my pleasure, yeah.
yeah, Elton John is, if he really is done touring, that is something that I will always deeply regret, is not seeing him perform live. And I wanted to take my wife. My wife loves Elton John's music, and but unfortunately we weren't able to make one of his final concerts there. So it's nice to hear that story from you. I appreciate it. It's not often
I loved his album Blue Moves. You know that album?
yeah, yeah.
Oh God, boy! I remember Mike had a pre-release copy of the album. I remember him bringing it round,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't one of the most commercially successful albums, but I just loved the whole real
Yeah.
real heartfelt
Yeah.
stuff. You know,
You're making me want to
baby's
listen.
got
Yeah.
blue eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
You know what? You're making me want to listen to that now. But you know what? I would actually, you have a guitar handy? Do you
Yeah,
feel like
yeah, I
you feel like
do.
you feel like playing something? Okay,
Yeah, I'm more than
okay,
happy.
awesome, awesome. Listen, I'm gonna take this out here, Chris. I uh don't really want this conversation to end because I am absolutely loving this. And it's kind of like when I finished your book. Once I got to chapter 20, sort of an ending, I kind of uh thought, I wish there was a part two of this, but it covers it so much. And I would really like to read more of your writing. And folks, what we've been talking about is And Then It Was Now, right here by Christopher Guard. And this right here with me has been Christopher Guard on his autobiography. It is available at all of your favorite booksellers. And Chris, thank you so much for meeting with me. Um, I think this right here is actually an essential read to anyone that is interested in arts and performing arts. I absolutely loved reading it, and I do believe that you will too. So go pick this up. And Then It Was Now by Christopher Guard. And Christopher, how can readers find you online? Are you on socials where if somebody had a question they could ask you?
Yeah, I've got a website which is www.christopherguard.co.uk.
Yep.
I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram,
All right.
and I'm on my music's on Spotify.
Okay. And we will put
Under,
those links
under,
right
under
here
Christopher
down.
Guard. So yeah, there's plenty of that going on. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So we'll put some links down below there. So
yeah. Now, what are we doing with this music? What's happening?
I don't know. You want to play something?
Yeah. Do
Oh,
you
okay.
want to, do you want to stop this recording and then I'll do that
Yeah.
separately?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me go ahead and do that.
I mean, we don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I mean, it might be interesting.
Either way is fine. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, and I'd like to.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, let's go ahead and let me go ahead and put a edit pause. I actually, you know what? I need to take a break now over here real quick, if you
Yeah,
don't mind.
but what I'm thinking is, you know, it's entirely up to you. But I think now I'm kind of up to speed. I mean, it might be a nice, you know, I could just knock out a song or two. You
Okay.
see what you think, and then we might be able to drop them in somewhere, you know, in the interview if you feel it's appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. And here, let me go ahead and let's see where, let's see. Let's do an edit here. Okay. And while you're getting ready, then I'm trying to think, yeah, I think we ended it because you were going like this right here.
Yeah, I think we
But
did.
yeah, okay, I think we did end it. Okay.
It says
Yeah,
this meeting it says this meeting is being recorded, but I mean, I don't know whether that's still happening or what.
yeah, it is. It is, but if I stop it, it's going to put it in two files.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think in a way it's probably better not to stop and do music early on, but I just wanted to give you the option of having some other, you know, material there, and
okay.
you can tell me to shut up.
I'm not going to do that. Okay, what am I
You can
looking
if you
for
want.
here? Okay.
Are we
Okay.
going for this now?
Yeah, yeah. Hang on just a second. I need to
No,
take a real.
I'm not ready either.
Okay, I'll be back in a minute here.
Yeah, me too. Durante, Toronto, man, let it go.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
hello.
I think I figured out how to do this edit here.
Oh,
What I'm going to
good.
do.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you ready?
Yeah,
Chris?
I'm ready. I'll play a few tunes. You
Yeah,
want to hear
absolutely.
them?
Yeah, I would love to hear some tunes. And again, thank you so much for talking to you today.
It's really been my pleasure. Yeah, thanks
Awesome.
very much, Stephen. Thanks for getting me.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. So I'm just putting together this bunch of songs. They're from all over my life. They're from 20 years ago, 25. When I was working with Indians in Moscow. So I've been through like writing for bands, rock bands, a bit more techno, a bit more whatever, and very ballady. I just write however I feel. When people say, "What genre do you write in?" I go like, "Well, what genre did the Beatles write in?" My uncle used to say, "Yeah, but the Beatles are different." I'm going, "Yeah, that's
Right,
right.
right.
Why do you have to write in one genre?" So, with some of these songs that I'll play are kind of like they're band numbers, but I just knock them out now on this axe,
Okay.
my little axe. Okay, so this is called Fear, yeah? And I wrote it on the way back from the art room at Wendell Park Primary School. Mama tried to do it with a smile. Daddy tried to do it with a long, long mile. Sister tried to do it with a curse. Brother tried to do it, but he had to rehearse. When they see your innocent face, they won't make you to fill that space. Take good care of your empty room. Don't let them in. Don't let them in. No fear. The big bad drug. Fear. The big bad drug. Fear. The big bad drug. Get it up. Get it up. Eat it up, yeah. Teacher tried to do it with a fact. Preacher tried to do it with a yakety yak. Broker tried to do it with a act. Jesus tried to do it, but he got the sack. When they see your innocent face, they won't make you to fill that space. Take good care of your empty room. Don't let them in. Don't let them in. No fear. The big bad drug. Fear. The big bad drug. Fear. The big bad drug. Get it up. Get it up. Eat it up, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, oh, when they see your innocent face, they won't make you to fill that space. Take good care of your empty room. Don't let them in. Don't let them in, no fear. The big bad drug, fear. The big bad drug, fear. The big bad drug, give it up, give it up, give it up, fear. The big bad drug, fear. Big bad drug, fear. The big bad drug, give it up, 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 give it up.
Nice. Awesome.
Okay. Do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, yes, please do. Now tell us about the lyrics in this. What inspired this?
Yeah, that was well, I wanted to write a song, I suppose, just called Fear, which is obviously
Right.
like it's a big thing, isn't it? So it's really what affects us all the time. It can be the biggest stumbling block for anything. But I particularly felt it when I was watching, working with young kids, and if you don't introduce an idea like those lines that say, you know, when they see your innocent face, they form a queue to fill that space.
Right.
Take good care of your empty room. Don't let them in. In other words, you've got this queue of, teachers and preachers and brokers and jokers, and they're all saying, because they haven't really worked it out for themselves from the inside, they're saying, I want you. You know, so
Right.
instead of working it out yourself, you kind of try to impose your rather impoverished, fractured version of education on someone else to prove that you haven't done so badly. Does that make any
Right.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's like, so the fear is the thing. So that it's saying, it's the big bad drug, and it is. It's like, if I can make you frightened, I can control you completely.
Yep. Yep.
And my whole
Yeah.
my whole ethos of when I was working with the kids in the art room, like I said, a little girl saying to me, I don't know what to do. And I said, neither do I. But you're the teacher. I said, am I? And that's the point.
Right. Okay. Awesome.
More?
Yes, please.
Let's go.
If you're down for it. Yeah, cool.
I'm up for it, man, because I'm interested to know genuinely, what you think of what I'm doing. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the chapter about writing a solo acoustic album, I mean, who does that? There's people that dream of it and aspire of
yeah.
it, but to actually execute it and do it is absolutely remarkable. Now, tell us about your guitar right there. What guitar are you using?
Well, this used to be my so-called second guitar. Like we used it in a video, and it got completely filled with poster paint. We used the Wendell Park Playground actually. It was for a video for the blues band I was in, for a song called Freezing Rain, and the video maker just wanted us to. It was mainly a slow. He just wanted to throw poster paint all over everybody, like powder paint.
Right.
And
Right.
you'll find it if you Google the Blues Freezing Rain, you'll see it's a very good video.
Okay. I'll
But
check it out.
this was the one I was playing in the video, because I
Okay.
thought I don't care about this guitar because it's my second guitar, so who cares?
Right.
It's still got paint inside it. But I've just grown to love it, and like as guitars get played in and the frets get a little bit lower, and your hand just gets used to it. I've
Right.
got better
Right.
guitars. I've got a lovely Takamine over there, which has the action's better. This is a bit of a bastard on my fingers. It's a real,
Right.
it really strips your fingers. But for some reason, I've just got to like it. I like that it's cutaway. Um, and also it's obviously electroacoustic, so I've used it on stage loads. So I mean, look how slim it is, but it kicks out quite a big sound for an
Yeah.
acoustic guitar. But it
Right.
also, I can plug it in, I can put it through effects. And I have done that on stage. So you're just going, you're playing very nicely, and then you suddenly go, and you can suddenly your acoustic guitar becomes quite aggressive.
And you can
So,
switch. You can switch that right there on stage.
well, I can do anything with this. Yeah, I mean, as long as you
Yeah.
can plug it in, you can do anything. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
I've got these lovely little new generation, quite small effects. I've got I think it's called a dumbler, and it's literally it just goes from like overdrive to nothing. So you can, be playing quite, as I say, quite delicately, and then just you got to make sure the levels are right, and the engineer knows what they're doing. But it's quite fun when people are thinking, oh, he's just the rhythm guitarist, and then you sort of go,
Right.
you
Awesome.
go, take that, you bastard.
Yeah. You weren't expecting that, huh?
You go, I'm sorry, sorry, I got carried away. And it's only this tiny little foot switch. So these guitars, they've got these like racks and racks and racks of chorus and flange and this and that and the other,
Right.
and all I've got is just like It's just my ripped up fingers on my little tumbler, My ripped up fingers and my little tumbler. Right, okay, so should I sing something else?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can you play us one more?
Yeah, definitely. This is about a straight up. Well, you something rocky or something gentle?
You pick.
Okay, well, okay, I'll sing. Yeah. Oh, I know. I'll do my little reggae song. Let's go here. Well, if it isn't you, well, I'll be blown on the corner in the same old clothes. Though the shops are all long gone, long gone. What do you know? Not much nowadays. I used to walk round the block with you and talk of Bob and Johnny. Bob and Johnny. Elegant dirt in that same old pleated skirt I bought you long ago. Elegant dirt in that hopeful Jimmy shirt, Portobello, Portobello, oh, Portobello. What the hell? Angel touches down and I don't care where you bought your wings this time. Time don't matter now. Time don't matter. Elegant dirt in that same old pleated skirt I bought you long ago. Elegant dirt in that hopeful Jimmy shirt, Portobello, 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 Portobello.
Beautiful. Absolutely awesome, Chris. Unbelievable.
So that's Portobello Road in London.
Okay. All right. Well, for folks that have been watching and listening, this is Christopher Guard, and we have discussed his book, And Then It Was Now. This is his autobiography. It is available at all your favorite booksellers right now. I absolutely enjoyed it. Definitely check it out. And Chris, if I were to ask you to play one more, would you be down for that?
Oh yeah, if you want me to, yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the zone. I quite often play at night, just to get
Okay.
myself up to speed.
Okay. If you're in the zone, what about something something kind of rock? You mentioned rock earlier.
Yeah. Well,
I was tempted to ask you to do a cover like you were talking about earlier.
yeah,
But
I'm not really got any covers up my sleeve, so it would have to be something a bit more. There's a song called Jealousy that I wrote, which is a little bit Rolling Stones. I mean, is that any good?
yeah. Because I would actually prefer something that you wrote as opposed to a cover.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not very good at covers. I can't learn them.
Right. Okay.
That was another pretty face that I put so I could get your money. That was another pretty trick that I pulled so I could get her money. Hey man, I can't eat this stuff. How come you're happy without it? Hey man, I can't get enough. How come you're happy without it? Jealousy, I got money. Jealousy, you got nothing. Jealousy, I got money. What's the use of money if you don't envy me? What's the use of money if you don't envy me? Yeah. That was another pretty chick that I pulled so I could get her money. That was another Lady Jane that I screwed so I could get her money. Hey girl, I can't eat this stuff. How come you're happy without it? Hey girl, I can't get enough. How come you're happy without it? Yeah. Jealousy, I got money. Jealousy, you got nothing. Jealousy, I got money. What's the use of money if you don't envy me? What's the use of money if you don't envy me? Envy me. Envy me. Hey man, I can't eat this stuff. How come you're happy without it? Hey girl, I can't get enough. How come you're happy without it? Hey girl, how come you keep on smiling, smiling from ear to ear? Hey girl, how come you're so fucking happy? Get the fuck out of here, bitch. Yeah. Jealousy, 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 jealousy.
Awesome. Absolutely beautiful, Chris. And you know, for people that have been watching and listening, thank Chris for his time. And Chris, after reading this, I was really so much looking forward to being able to talk to you about it. And when I reached out, thank you for saying yes. And I absolutely do recommend And Then It Was Now by Christopher Guard. It is out now. It's a high quality book by Oak Tree Books. It's full of entertainment, history, knowledge, and just plain good humor and fun. And I highly recommend it. Chris, was there anything that I did not ask you today that you wish I had?
Whoa.
I think we covered quite a bit there.
Well, you invited me over to San Fran for some fish. That's about as good as it got.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, and I hope I can make it over there to your neck of the woods one of these days.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So okay, so will we talk again? Are we gonna stop recording and then talk a bit more? Are we going?
Yes.
Or is that...
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So yep.
So don't panic.
Yeah, don't panic. Exactly.
Well, I might panic a little bit.
All right. So here.
Okay. How was that sounding over the fucking?
I think it sounds good, and I want to listen to it without the headphones because this headphone is not really very good quality.
I'm just really interested how I get like I record a lot just straight onto my phone, you know. But
Right.
and it's like you could, so you know, officially it's just to demo a song just to play to somebody. But it really interests me how, because phones are such good quality now,
Right.
and you know, and I like just recording stuff absolutely dry, and then I listen alongside something that's been more embellished. And someone spent a lot of time working on it, and I'm going, actually, I prefer it like it was in the first place.
Right. 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 Okay.
So you sort of say, well, what am I actually listening to here? You know.
Right. Okay.
I mean,
All right.
basically, I mean, you know, I just want to go out and I just want to go out and annoy people.
All right.
What's
Oh,
yeah.
and then it was now. Raw and unedited with Christopher Card.
Yeah,
Chris,
exactly.
is nice to see you today. And
It's been great. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
And
I really appreciate it.
keep in touch. Take care.
Yeah. Will, for sure. All righty, man.